We are live. Hey, welcome everyone to another. This is a 2020 version edition of Pontificators. So, welcome to 2020, you guys. We have. Whoa! I like that.
It's serious now.
I don't know what the hell. Wait, do we have sound effects now? Is that what's going on?
Not really.
Why was that you, Wolf?
That was my notification saying that Archie Bear is streaming live.
Hell yeah.
Oh, nice.
We are streaming live. Well, let me introduce everybody so they have a point of reference, and then we can get nutty. Okay, so I'm Archie Bear, 35-year comic book veteran. We have Todd Mulrooney that would be my right, and we have Todd the Wolf directly under, and then we have the great enigmatic. How would you describe yourself, Durakin?
God.
Oh my God, you did not.
I was gonna say stalker-esque.
It's getting closer.
Getting close, getting warm. So we are the Pontificators. We have a brother that did not come in, and that is Chester Busby the Third. But he might pop in. You never know. You never know with Chester. So how you guys? You guys missed 2019?
I'm happy 2019 is gone.
It's not been long enough to miss it.
It hasn't been gone long enough. Well, let's go in order, okay? Mulrooney, sum up your 2019.
There was some good professionally and bad personally.
Okay.
There were some things that happened to me 2019 that caused a lot of emotional stress.
Oh no! Do we want to get into detail, or should we just?
No.
Can we talk about the good stuff, though?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got to do that Malin book, Graveyard Shift 2.
Oh yeah.
And I think also my first stuff came out with Paul Cooperberg, which was it was called The Blank, and it was in.
No, you can say it. Go ahead.
It was an anthology called Charlatan Arrow is what it was.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Is this the same Paul Kuppelberg that worked at DC Comics and was an editor?
Yes, 40 years back.
I worked with Paul then. If you talk to him, tell him hi.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. Very nice guy. Like I just said prior to coming on, that it always takes me back a little bit to talk to somebody that, that has that kind of a career length and all that. It's like talking to a legend in comics. Even though what does that amount to? I don't know. But to me, it's a big deal. You know what I mean?
Oh, dude, I know exactly what you mean. It was so weird. Like, EBS came into the chat the other night when I was live streaming, and I started off strong, and then I kind of lost it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Ethan Van Sciver. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it hits you.
Right.
Most of the time it's not a big deal, but then sometimes you just like, wow, I'm talking to one of my heroes here. So
right.
yeah, it does get a little bit intimidating at times. And sometimes, like for me, I don't even see it coming. It'll just happen. And then I'm like, holy shit, I can't speak. Yeah, so I know what you're talking about. So can you name what you're working on now? Is that's been announced, right?
Yeah, well, not really announced, but yeah, I'm working on something for Terrific Productions, and I'm doing some inking right now.
Ooh, that's what I like to do. I like to draw, but I like to ink.
Yeah.
Almost more so. Nah, it's a 50-50. I like both. Well, very good, my friend. So it looks like Mulrooney is very busy, and that 2019 was a good year. You're looking forward to 2020?
Certainly, yeah. Especially, I think I got a better handle on some things, so I think it'll go a little smoother.
Oh, very good, man. So how you doing, Todd DeWolf?
Oh well, I'm all right, hanging in there. I'm still trying to get a hold of what 2020 means for me, really.
So are you one of those people that make the resolutions and all that kind of stuff?
No, I'm not a resolutionator at all. No, I have plans. Maybe I have plans. Like there's things I want to do through the year, but it's nowhere like a resolution.
Okay. I do make resolutions. I usually keep them, and the reason I like them because I feel it's almost like, you know, how people go, oh, springtime, it's anew, like life is starting over and all that other crap. Like I look at it as like, okay, you know, the past is the past, this is the future, so I'm going to make some future plans right now. So I sit down and I actually write them down, and I have a to-do list for 2020. So I'm one of the few, I guess.
That's cool that you do that.
Yeah, this 2019 though, I have received more comics, but they're in graphic novel form this year than I have in 15 years or so. Because
man.
Yeah, because of the way comics had gone. You know, I mean, I wanted to get some comics. I got a few here and there that I thought was kind of interesting. You know, stories weren't catching me. Art went downhill, and then this all happened, and I discovered that you can get, you know, great things, you know, mailed to you, support people, and this whole thing has been so much fun. I got more comics than ever, and then got swept up into it, pulled in a bit myself. So it's that part of 2019 was fun. A few other things not so good either. I guess we all have a little bit of a few personal things that, you know, that'll happen in your life. People that you lose as well, and let's see. And then of course I'm working on. I begun working on my own product. So.
Well, you said
and.
Did you, Wait! I have to ask you this. So this is important. Do you have your early sign up for your project for your Indiegogo?
Yes.
Your pre-launch.
Yes. I've got the early sign up. I'm in a little bit of a restructuring. I think at this point in the where how I'm going to get where I'm going to get. I think so. And I may even have a plan B.
Yeah, is it up right now? Can people go there?
Yes, the sign up is there. I've got a good bit of people already signed up. Those people, of course, were able to receive the Christmas card promotional and things like that, and the newsletters that I put out. And of course, like I said, I have yet to put out the newsletter of what, like, the ongoing plan maybe, because I've developed more than I can squeeze into a comic. Right, that always happens. But
yeah, you always overwrite. Like that's. Have you done comics before?
Right. No, I haven't done a comic before.
Yeah, because that's usually the first timer always overwrites.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's not just overwrite. It's because I want a world. Right. I want to make sure that there's a world available for these characters to live in, instead of just putting out a quick little story. And I know that is a bigger endeavor than what's possible. So, like George Lucas, of course, you know, Todd has kind of poked fun at me a little bit on this idea. Like George Lucas, he had this greater vision of a trilogy of trilogies of trilogies, and he took Episode 4 and said, I can make this as a movie, and I can see if people even like it. So that's what I've done with this comic right now, and I'm on the verge of basically pulling the trigger on also writing a novel with all the other backstory and everything else involved. So you'll have both a novel and comic adaptation of one portion of that.
Well, 2020 looks very bright for you, my friend. Why don't you, in the chat, DeWolf, just type in your link and let people go check out your pre-launch page.
Mm-hmm.
DeWolf is going to have a Jar Jar, Eric Hawkins says.
That's funny. That's great funny. You know what? I probably will.
You know what? I'm going to have to go to YouTube because I'm not getting the chat. Hold on.
I'm not seeing. No, I'm not. Yeah, it's not. It's not.
By the way, hello Rhaegar, Inkspots, and Eric Hawkins.
Yes. Welcome everybody. I can't control it. Maybe StreamYard. Sometimes StreamYards is a little bit behind. Like it takes a while for it to catch up.
Yeah,
so
it's like 20 seconds.
We have a sign of life out there. I'm just going to have to kind of jump back and forth between StreamYard and YouTube because I can't see the chat here. But very good. Yeah, DeWolf, put that in the chat, and then people can click on it and check out your pre-launch page. So Durakin, how you been, brother?
I'm doing good. Everything seems to be moving forward for me. So I got my comic thing going. Got up to the 5th page done with colors, though I need to do some editing with it. The artist's probably going to be mad at me about that one. Because we had that page done for a while, and I'm like, yeah, I just looked at all these pages, and maybe the composition isn't quite right here.
Uh-oh.
So.
Yeah, it happens. Trust me, it happens, man. So I have to ask you, your avatar there, that artwork looks amazing. Who did that?
Todd.
So Todd DeWolf did, or Todd Mulrooney did the rogue drawing there?
Yeah, Todd Mulrooney did the rogue drawing.
And you did the colors, right?
No, Todd DeWolf did that.
Oh my.
I did not do the drawing, and let me say this about Durakin though. He's getting close. Coloring wise, he's making some good choices, and his skin tones are looking good. So I think he is getting very close to the point where if I were somebody looking for a colorist, I'd give him a test page. Obviously, that would be an easy thing to do, but I'd give him a chance.
Yeah. So the reality of it, you did the colors, right, Durakin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And who did the pencils?
Obviously you. I didn't see who your commissions were for though. It's like he's just random person or what?
I think this guy's name was Adam, and it was an older commission. I finally finished it up. I have a few more that I have to get to as well. So if there's anybody in the chat that has a commission by me, be patient. I think that the two I have left, I have Voodoo from Wildcats, which I do have it all broken down. It's pretty much penciled. I just have to tighten it up and ink it. And then I'm doing a white commission from Black and White. So I just did the layout for that today. So if you guys are in the chat, just know they're moving along here. They're getting done. So, well, everybody's doing good, man. I'm glad. I'm so looking forward to 2020. And I think it's going to be a big year for all of us. It looks like we all have plans going. So this will be awesome. And so if anybody's tuning in to Pontificators the first time, excuse me, what we do here is we pick a subject, usually pop culture, comic books, movies, novels, that type of thing. And we just talk endlessly about them, pros and cons, and we try to be as provocative as possible. So the reason there's so many of us in the chat or in the stream here is so we can get many different points of view. And sometimes it gets to knock down, drag out, especially between me and DeWolf. We just don't see things eye to eye most of the time.
That happens. That can happen.
We are almost always, Todd and I are almost always in sync, man. DeWolf, that is, yeah. All right.
Honestly, though, the guy we're missing for that is Chester, because Chester and I can have absolutely opposite opinions and see directly eye to eye about it at the same time.
Yeah. He's the guy that kind of throws the monkey wrench into the works. But it's all good. So we're going to have to rely on Durakin for that.
I am not evil.
You're evil every chat, man. I think, I'm not gonna elaborate on that one. But yeah, so what we have to do, we have a private like a green room where we all talk. So we came up with a bunch of different topics for today's show, and they're all really cool. So I thought what would be fun is maybe between the four of us and even the chat, we pick what we're going to talk about for the next hour. So we have politics in comics, which I think was DeWolf's. We have morality in storytelling, which I believe was mine. And then we have Draken's, which I think is the most fun out of all these, which is time travel, probably like a best and worst as far as stories, novels, movies, comics, that type of thing. And do you have something to throw in the mix, Todd?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, there was also two more that I had earlier. Remember?
What were those?
Let's see, on funding comics and when someone's ready for prime time versus amateur.
Yeah, these are all good. I also have written down from one of the previous chats is I forget who came up with this. Where has all the creativity gone? And then the other one was hero is only as good as villain. And then we have is our Japanese comics the model of the future for comics?
These are all good.
Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about, but we have to pick one. So let's just go with the three original that we had in the chat, which is politics and comics, morality and storytelling, and time travel, best and worst.
I vote Darkwing Duck.
Oh my gosh. Todd, now I see what you're talking about. I vote Darkwing. It's not even on the table, my friend. Okay, so I don't hear anybody.
Okay, say it again. Read them again,
Okay, we have politics in comics, we have morality in storytelling, and then we have time travel, best and worst, kind of pop culture time travel.
How do people vote?
Yeah, we can let the people vote in the chat, and then we can as well. But
Wait. Politics in comics I put something after that.
What did you write? Let me see. Do you remember?
I read half of it.
Let me see. I'm in the chat here.
Politics in comics, propaganda, or pish posh.
Propaganda or pish tosh? Yes.
What is pish tosh?
What is pish tosh?
What is that? Is that like Guardian Levioso? Is this a spell?
Yeah, this is J.K. Rowling's nonsense.
No, it's not. Pish tosh is something that's junk, or
I think it's pish posh. I think it's British. Like, oh, pish posh.
Oh. Yeah, close to that. So, is it actually something there? Is politics and comics useful? Does it do anything, or does it do nothing and it's just garbage that's in there and society doesn't even care?
Okay, well, you got the ball rolling, so let's go with politics. Wait, I wish I could click on it, you guys. I can't accent these things because the chat isn't showing up in StreamYard. But Inkspot says piss toss.
Well, actually, it's a combination of two because the other one is a tish tosh and then it's pish posh. They're rhyming things like that.
Whatever.
Don't question my etymological knowledge.
I'm still lost, by the way.
Learn some stuff.
Okay, so wait, we have a piss toss in the chat, so I guess that's a thumbs up for that one. We have morality and storytelling. What is that? Raging Goblin says. Let's see what else. I think that's it. This doesn't help. We need at least one more in one direction or the other.
That's true.
Yes. And then
one direction will help.
Time travel, which I think would be the most fun to do.
Yeah.
No need to watch that. Okay, so let's do a round robin. So, Todd, which topic do you want to talk about?
I think politics.
Okay, so DeWolf, I wonder where you're going to go with yours.
Well, yeah, I'm ready for that one. I'm ready for that one. So I'll go with politics.
Okay, so Draken.
I'm going with time travel because I don't want to talk about that type of stuff
Oh no,
right now.
no. Well, you could be the
We'll kill it quick.
the tension in the chat.
I
Well,
want to be new guy.
I'm going to go with the flow because we actually have a piss toss vote in the chat, and then we have 2 within the stream here between Todd and DeWolf. So I am going to go piss toss politics.
I don't think Inkspot's meant to vote like that, but we'll take it.
Oh, I know he didn't, but I thought it was funny that I took it that way. We have the metal ahoy there. Hey, brother. Wait. Inkspot says time travel. I changed my vote. Oh no.
No.
Oh no. So now it's 2-2, right? We have no, yeah. So we have 2. We have Todd and we have DeWolf. As far as the but I already voted 2, so that would be 3. But I could change my vote if Inkspots is going to change his vote. If I went to time travel, then would we have a stalemate?
Well,
No.
would we have to get your wife in here because was she the expert on the time travel stuff?
Oh my god! As a tiebreaker. All right, we're gonna give it one moment. So whoever in the chat types in the next topic, that's what we're gonna talk about.
Oh my goodness.
So we're waiting. It's all dependent on the chat right now. This is interactive, man. This is
why democracy doesn't work, by the way. So
This is why democracy doesn't work. That's politics, my friend.
This is politics. I think everything's leaning towards the politics, though. But Inkspots definitely threw a monkey wrench into the mix here, and nobody's typing in. They want to see us sweat. All right. Yeah. Are you sweating, DeWolf?
I am. I really am. This is important to me.
This is important. Oh no! Eric said time travel. Wait a minute. Does Durakan have an alias? Is your alias Eric S?
no, I do have aliases though. You just don't know about them.
I concede. Eric, good job. The interaction is great. Thank you.
Okay. So now I feel bad. So is that 3-on-3 then? That is 3-on-3, right? So it's 3 time travel and 3 politics. I'm
It's
gonna
time travel.
What's that?
It's time travel. I think that was it.
No, it's 3-on-3, dude. It's both Todd's and me. We both voted politics, and then we have Durakan, and then we have 2 time travel in the chat. So I'm going to yell down to my wife and just throw stuff out there and see which one she chooses. Talk amongst yourself.
So did you expect this, Todd?
Hey, Pamela.
No. Hey, Durakan, I'm looking at your coloring of this. Great job on the skin, especially on her face.
Yeah. The skin color is actually because of the. I used the old school style dye colors.
Yeah.
Are the best I can replicate for Photoshop, and for skin. I noticed that it doesn't have enough red in it, so I just do like a 10% red color over it, with what's the whatever the spray one is,
Right.
the
Right.
airbrush,
What
and
she
it gives
wants,
it a better look.
what she wants us to talk about actually in the chat is
Cookies.
pineapple on pizza or not. That's what she wants us to talk about.
God.
I'm just kidding. No, she said politics, man.
All right.
Yeah. So that's the tiebreaker right there.
Well,
Can't
all
argue
right.
with that. So Durakan gets vetoed.
Can't argue with the little lady.
Yes. All right, man. Well, it was your topic. DeWolf set it up, man. Let's talk.
So you've got politics. I mean, this is the thing that has happened all throughout the current model, right? We've seen politics interject. Well, I mean, going back to the X-Men and throughout, and it gets touched on a lot, right? Sometimes it's propaganda, sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's agenda driven, and that's what we've seen now, and that's what we're having more and more problems with. But really, I think what I wanted to discuss was, does it even matter? Does the politics that we see in comics though the storyline itself, we may not like it. Is it actually doing what it wants to do and affect people? Does society even interact with the politics that we see in comics? And we can spread the discussion out further into movies and whatnot. Does it even make a difference, or is all of this just pish tosh?
Okay, well, give us an example.
Much ado about nothing, if you will.
Yeah, give us an example of so we're talking about politics in comic books specifically.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so give us an example of what you're talking about.
Well, I know the first time that I was engaged with this was the X-Men's idea of diversity, right? Because and the mutant agenda, or the agenda against the mutants, because we're government entities were trying to control and regulate mutant activity, and the Sentinels were after them, and it just became a huge storyline on how that became a worldview that eventually ends up in just a destroyed, dystopian future if you follow the idea that you cannot have diversity in the whatnot. But did that actually affect me? Did that actually? I don't believe so. I mean, we were already in the midst. We were already beyond the politics of racial diversity, what that meant, civil rights. Civil rights had come and gone, and that was then happening more as a fun storyline than actually propaganda. So it was at that point much ado about nothing.
Wasn't that around the late 60s where it was more about integration and not just the acceptance?
60s or 70s? Was that when that more of that started?
I mean, when X-Men started really doing that stuff, because I think the initial integration happened in the mid 60s, right?
Yeah, the civil rights movement of the 60s, once again, was before the X-Men were in full storyline mode with this idea throughout the 70s
Right.
and 80s.
Right, so the X-Men then coming in a little bit later is them. They're actually telling stories about how humans and mutants should interact, in which they're giving you a morality tale about how, like, we should interact together with this new type of person. And that's the same thing that you're getting with the later on, because you've already got these people exist. We're going to interact with them. Now you need to know how to figure out how to interact with them.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it would actually affect people at that point, and you're doing it on a personal level instead of this grand governmental policies that it came down.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all that storytelling is about, teaching people how to interact with each other and getting that, like, what to do in this situation. You're trying to give them a tale that they can relate to and teach them how to interact in that way. Politics is the same way. It's giving you a structure and how we interact, how we agree that we can interact. So to say that you shouldn't have politics in comics is kind of wrong. It's just they're kind of the same thing. They're just approaching it from different angles.
Well, let me dial it one step backwards then from something like civil rights, and let's just talk about the individual person like Peter Parker, right? It's designed to be the nerd or the geek, and you feel for him in his situation. Did what we have going on now, is that part of everyone that's now grown up knowing Spider-Man was this geek but a cool dude? Now people's acceptance of geek culture, is that part of it?
Yes. He wasn't that kind of. I think he was I think where the nerd culture kind of became popular is because people realized, oh, they're not stupid, they're smart. Oh, they're not.
I can cheat off their homework.
Right. I don't think Peter Parker helped that in a sense, because I think it was just an easy trope to use, that he was less hero-like, and that made, when his heroing began, it to be sort of more gravitas, more grandiose. So I think it just worked towards building that, and not so much like, hey, let's accept geeks. I don't think it worked that way, but I could be wrong.
And it's kind of was a failure with Spider-Man because part of that story was that the bully also has problems too, and we had that for a while, but then it kind of stopped.
But back on the subject, the politics in comics, I'm not really sure what the parameters are. Like, are you talking about just like stories, like comic book stories that had politics involved, and that's what we're going to talk about, or how like comic books that have had politics in it affects the reader or the fan culture or just life, in general?
Right.
So what are
a lot of that comes from that second line, the tagline, propaganda or pish tosh. Is it propaganda? Has it done anything? Is there a purpose behind it? Is there a reason? Is it effective? And do you want to put it into your comics? Or is anytime you put politics into comics and try to put it in there, is it just junk? And it's not effective at all.
Yeah. Okay. So on several levels, we're going to be talking about this. So not just the story itself, but maybe the ramifications on like the ripple effects, either how they reflected the times or how they maybe changed people's points of view. Is that right?
Yeah, because you see that. I mean, a lot of the talk these days is the agenda-driven storylines that we constantly keep seeing across all kinds of media fronts, not just comics. And are those agendas, do they have purpose, and are they even effective? And so if you want to sell your product, do you want to put it in there?
Okay. So I think I get the parameters more so now. So like what you're saying, like with the X-Men, X-Men specifically was kind of like the Star Trek model, where it was like all kinds of different people kind of getting along, in this one kind of storyline or this world, this reality, even though not like Star Trek, but with all these different people moving and saving society, but society not necessarily accepting them 100%. So you have the political ramifications or the social political ramifications of they could possibly be mankind's savior, but mankind isn't 100% down with them. So I don't know how.
I think you were onto that with the Star Trek model. Star Trek model, it was just the same. Did the Star Trek model of seeing all these different people from Russians to Asians, and then there's even the interracial kiss in there, even though it caused a stir, did it do anything, and did it even help the show?
Yeah, it did.
Oh.
Yeah, I think
it did, just by their TV stats. It did.
Yeah, I think certain things do have ripple effects. If nothing more than just the more you do these stories, the more commonplace they become, and the more acceptance. It becomes the norm. It becomes the societal norm.
Yeah.
So at one time it would be kind of weird to see a character in a wheelchair, and now like it doesn't seem that out of place. Kind of thing. So
really,
see, when you mentioned that, I think Barbara Gordon as Oracle, perfect example of how it's perfectly fine to have something like that in there. But then I can go, here's an example of something that is like, this is extreme. If you took Hansel and Gretel, you changed the characters to the witch is Hitler and the Hansel and Gretel are Jews. Like, why would you do that? I can derive a whole bunch of political messages from that, and that would be horrible to do because it doesn't actually serve the story. It's serving the political agenda. You want to serve the story, not the agenda, and that's where the mistake that most people have is right now. And people simplify to no politics. That's not what it should be there. It's no propaganda.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So possibly. I'm trying to think of another example because there's plenty of like examples like where comic books have tried to be political. One that harkens back to the '60s was the Green Lantern stuff that Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams did, where there was the African American guy, and he was talking to Hal Jordan. He said, you're so busy saving the blue skin guys and this race of people and whatever out in the galaxy, but did you ever think about trying to help people like me here on Earth? So he was trying to get people to think about how we view the world and maybe what these heroes can be, or what they stand for. So is that kind of an example of politics in comics?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, from what you just said a little bit earlier too, that it does have a ramification because it leads you to think a little bit, and it becomes more of the norm. Because I'm one to actually, I come into this thinking that it's really a bunch of gunk, and it doesn't matter. It sounds like more from you guys that as this stuff keeps hitting more comics, it also hits other media, and it does make a difference. And one of these I'm thinking of now is Alpha Flight with North Star. He was a gay guy, and I was a teenager, and when I noticed, like other teens mentioned it to me, other people that were also reading books, and they're like, well, he's gay and stuff, and well, is he really, and it wasn't that big of a deal at the kind of, I guess within to me. He was just another character, but now you see that agenda being a lot more in pages from gay, lesbian, and everything else nowadays. And since it is more the norm, maybe it is having a bigger impact.
Well,
Right,
no,
I
I think it's a reverse. No,
Well, I think what you're trying, because I'm just trying to basically just get a handle on everything and try to make it kind of work for myself. So based on the Alpha Flight, and it's like Scott Lobdell, Mark Pacella, they did the book, and maybe Scott Lobdell had a bigger social agenda, maybe he didn't, maybe he just wrote a story. I don't really know what was going on with Scott, but let's just say that he was just writing a story and just using this as a topic. But then I think the difference, and maybe where you're going with it, and I'm just trying to sharpen, the focus here, is that like the stuff now then would be politicized. So it wouldn't just be a story like about like socially accepting, or just a matter of fact story that just happens to have this guy that is a homosexual and comes out of the closet. Because nowadays they would probably virtue signal the hell out of it and then make it a political statement of some sort. So
that's the problem right there.
Yeah. So is that kind of like, I'm just trying to figure out the parameters.
Well, yeah. So where I guess where I'm driving it to though is the final question is what Durakin just said. He said, "There's the problem." Is it a problem? Is it a problem? And should we even care?
Well, maybe it wasn't. It depends on what they do with the information, right? Because if it was just meant to be a harmless story that Scott Lobdell came up with about just like a different type of person, you know what I mean, with different backstory, different history, different likes, different takes, just to create something unique. But then the companies or people get behind it and then politicize it. And use it to sell an agenda. I don't think you saw that as much in the day, because to be honest, I'm friends with Scott and with Mark Pacella, and I know for sure Mark didn't want that kind of heat. It was just a paycheck to him. He just wanted to to draw the story. But he got hit with a lot of agenda, if you will, political stuff that sort of did come out of that, because then, gay magazines, stuff like that were contacting him and wanted, to do interviews and things. And, he doesn't have any insight on any of that stuff. He gets thrown into the political arena, and
all that stuff is fine. It's the focus, like where your focus is. It's not exactly there's a gay character, okay, whatever. If it's the focus that it's a gay character, then that's a problem. Like Power Rangers, everyone jokes about, the red character is Native American and the black ranger is black. It's like, but as a kid and as watching that, that's not focused at all. So it doesn't matter, even though that was changed to be like that on purpose. So it's the focus that matters. It's not that it's there, it's the focus.
Okay. Hey, we haven't heard from Todd.
Yeah. Because I don't know. I mean, as far as politics being in comics, there's the superheroes should. I always say that superheroes should fight supervillains for super stakes, and if there is anything that's political, it shouldn't sort of parody real life. It should kind of like, obviously, like the X-Men. I think they work better as being sort of outcasts and sort of maybe look like they're being misguided, and that always worked better for me. But if you're gonna parallel what is really going on, to me, that's just like, it's boring. It's just like, enough of that. I want my escapism to have escapism, and I don't mind that it has politics, but they should be politics of different stakes and not real stakes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's like I said, that's why the focus matters, is because what happens is when you're like just doing it in the background and it's there, it's perfectly fine, no one brings it up, you start to see that and you're just taking it in as normal. And so that's when it starts to make a difference, because then in the back of your mind, or even consciously, you're starting to think about it. But when someone just puts it right up in your face, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have the opposite reaction.
And also, when they not only throw it in your face, but they also tell you how you should feel about, whatever it is.
Uh-huh. So I'm going to try to sum up this a little bit. So it appears like politics in comics can be effective. It can make some change in some people's lives. At the same time, at least in our circles, we don't like to see politics specifically. We just prefer good stories, and if politics is part of the story, of course, it's welcomed.
Well, I think as long as it doesn't feel like it's agenda driven, or that it has some kind of deeper
propaganda.
Like propaganda. Because the thing is, like, if we go back to even the X-Men, not that it was political, but they were making a statement. It was more of a social statement than a political statement. So where I think of more politics is like Watchmen. Watchmen got into politics. What is it?
Whoa.
Batman, what was it? Dark Knight Returns got into politics, in the actual comic book itself. So I'm not that familiar with other comics that have actually got into, political, the political arena. I know that Marvel didn't they do a Spider-Man where they had Obama in it? But I'm not sure if that was propaganda as much as just like, because I never read it, as much as just like, hey, here's the new president and Peter Parker's hanging out with them. So
occasionally that would always kind of happen. It happened. I guess you could say it happened with every president.
No, I think it happened more with Obama.
No, I'm saying throughout history of comics, I'm sure every single president has appeared in comics in some form or another. Because I remember Reagan being in Man of Steel. Burns' Man of Steel.
I saw more Obamas, I think, than ever. Of course, he was in media across the board, and I think then what that means is that it is propaganda. I think when you put propaganda in comics, it is propaganda. It can be effective and have the result that you want it to be.
Yeah, and if you think about that, the opposite of Obama was Donald Trump, which you saw a lot in comic books as well, but not in a favorable light. They used him as a villain and as a to poke fun at. So you have seen those things as well.
Inkspot says, I don't want politics or sex or anything that's in there just to be there. Everything needs to move the story forward. I don't want an agenda, just a good story. And you know what? I call all that stuff pornographic. Like if it's politics just to be there, that's pornographic. If it's sex, it's pornographic. But if it's just nudity, then that's not pornographic. So
some of the original comics that came out, like Captain America and Superman, both were designed to fight Nazis. And it was propaganda that Americans and America was greater than everything else, and we're going to win. And I think that propaganda arm of comics actually still is inactive. I think it can be effective. It's not pish tosh after all, even though that's the way I believe to begin with. But I think after discussing this, I think it can be propaganda. It can be effective. And wow, I got a new take on it.
Yeah, Eric, Art is very old. He's been here since the beginning of the country.
I do remember most presidents. Especially in the wartime on the coming over the Delaware with George Washington,
McKinley.
Yeah, McKinley, all those guys. Yeah, it's good times. Good times.
Grover Cleveland, that guy. Yeah.
Drinking buddies, huh?
Yeah, drinking. Well, we had to drink to stay warm. It was cold there.
Forge.
While we're talking about drinking buddies, you mentioned Scott, and you're friends with him and all. Alpha Flight, as a side note, Alpha Flight for me was a new and different, quirky group. I enjoyed reading that, and pass that on the next time you guys are sitting around or whatever.
Very underrated writer, Scott.
Yeah, definitely. But the thing is that he's kind of flown under the radar, but it's done very well for himself because that Happy Death Day franchise is pretty damn strong.
I think what happened to Scott is it's really hard to follow. It's like you wouldn't want to go on after Eddie Murphy as a comedian. You want to go get it done before him, not have to go after him. You know what I mean? Like he came after some people that sometimes when that happens, somebody's there for a long time, they just go, geez, we just want that guy back. There's a lot of things he didn't finish. There was a lot of things that Claremont didn't finish. And Scott had to follow that up. So I think sometimes he's not looked at in the light or in the right context because of that.
Yeah, that would be a hard act to follow. And then, like you said, to wrap up all those storylines as well is a little challenging. Yeah, definitely. So, so can you guys think of any other, politic or political type of, and we're talking mostly mainstream Marvel DC, political type comic books. Because the only ones I can think of just as far as like story was like Dark Knight Returns. So those were the Reagan years. So the backdrop was, nuclear annihilation and, Superman basically being a tool for the administration. That's very political. And then Watchmen, which was like, Nixon had stayed in power and never left. And that, we were also on the brink of like a nuclear genocide, which was backdrop as Dark Knight Returns.
It's when you mentioned Watchmen that was my turning point in thinking that how effective, well-made comic propaganda can be, because Watchmen I have seen become popular. I've seen some of the tropes inside of it and things that they were insinuating in Watchmen come out in other areas, and people talk about it, and that's effective.
Well, here's a fun thing. Superman can be looked at as very much propagandistic because
Right.
he's an immigrant. Well, according to most people, even though legally he probably wouldn't be. He's an immigrant, and then he gets taught American values, and he goes on to be the greatest superhero ever. And he spouts, what is it, truth, justice, and the American way. That's
Precisely.
pretty damning in terms of propaganda.
Yeah, but propaganda is different than politics, right? Or are they one and the same?
No, propaganda.
Well, yeah. In this regard, it is. Yeah.
But is that political? Like, is that political propaganda or just propaganda? Like, just like country, like, you know, your state, you're proud of your country and your values, or, you know, because Superman wasn't created by the government. Superman was created by the people. So when you say propaganda, I usually think that propaganda would come from a government source versus like an individual.
It doesn't have to be. It can also be from like a political ideology, and political doesn't mean like a specific government. Like your political ideology could be, I don't know, the Green Party, which has never held office anywhere. Or
I get what you're saying. I think you're right, because the thing that might be behind this whole EU thing could be very much tied to fascism, you know. So I think you're right. Sometimes a political ideology may not be in power, but can have influence. And I think you're seeing some of that with that guy George Soros, you know, who's kind of like that.
Yeah, but you brought up Superman. Did Superman specifically have an ideology, or like was that their agenda? You know, Siegel and Schuster, when they created the character, do you have to you would have to bring that into the equation as well? Like, what was their motivations? You could say later that maybe somebody used that as a propaganda tool, but it wasn't at its inception designed to be a propaganda tool. Right?
Yeah, I would say it's not propaganda, but you could make the argument for it, and you could make the argument that it's America's so great that it can even take a immigrant from a destroyed nation where the values are so horrible that they destroyed their own planet and made them the greatest superhero that will save the universe.
All right. Since we're on this, what about this? Like, you know, when they started taking the American way out of the truth justice part. So was that
Right.
a political agenda there, or was that just dollars and cents because they wanted to start selling Superman, you know, throughout the world?
A little bit of both, but I think it's more naive and dishonest to say that it's just to sell it around the world.
So you think that Warner Brothers and the companies that are behind, you know, Superman had a political agenda?
Yeah, it's because you can make the argument that the American way part is like unappealing to other places in the world. So you want to take that out. But at the same time, Superman is intrinsically situated in America to begin with, and his values are American. So that's already there regardless of whether you have that there or not. And so by removing it, you're actually just doing it for political agenda, not to sway anyone in reality.
Well, now this conversation's getting good. I like this now. Well, then how do you guys feel about when the early stuff about Captain America, when Marvel announced that they were going to do the movie, and they were kind of downplaying the Nazi aspect, and they were saying that it was Hydra. So do you think that was politically driven, so that it wasn't like America versus Germany or the Nazis, as much as it was, you know, just Captain America versus a supervillain, kind of like what Todd was talking about earlier?
I think I think it was driven on purpose. I don't know if I would call it politically driven, but I just think it made better sense to them to go, let's not use Nazis, you know, let's not go there. Let's not, you know, we can do it this way, and it's the same movie. You can change them to Nazis and tie the whole Hydra into Nazis, and it doesn't change anything. But it's just we don't want. It's like people don't want those reminders, and I think there's a sensitivity that is out there now that we play to, and I don't. I'm not saying I like it, and I'm not saying I agree to it, but I understand you don't want to upset anyone, but sometimes you upset like a small group and their voice is very big, even though it's a very small group.
Right. And
So
there are some that think that it is political because they're like, we don't want to, kind of stir up old, like wounds. We don't want to dig up the past, and we don't want to rehash that. We just want to move forward, so they don't really get too deep into, the reality of the situation.
I've been thinking about sort of this aspect of education for a while, is if we don't teach our children, the next generation about slavery, and they never see that in the history books, if we even get rid of some of that social studies stuff that they get early on, then would they even know? It's almost like, oh my God, we did that to people. And so now So does that breed something into a person of, well, we were always superior and versus inferior. You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering, like, why not get rid of it? Why not introduce it to kids? Because most kids, if it wasn't in there, they would never realize it. Like, oh, we actually had slaves.
Yeah, well, there's that saying that if you don't know the past, then you're destined to do it again.
Yeah, that's like a fairy tale, though. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we wouldn't in some form or another, but I don't think we would do it to a minority group. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't agree. I think if you know the past and the newer generations are crystal clear on what did take place in the past, then we can learn from it and move on as a whole, as a collective, as a human species. But if you don't know some of these things have existed, and you don't know that society has fought against those, and there was a lot of bloodshed and a lot of pain and suffering involved, then you might be a little bit more in that direction, to go into that direction and to maybe do the same thing.
Okay, but here's the funny thing about that. Throughout human history, we've progressed not by not having propaganda, but by having a sort of propaganda where we don't have the history per se, but we have a distillation of what we learned from that history. And we tell tales of what we learned from that and what we should be doing, rather than the actual thing. So if we apply that to modern stuff, the X-Men, for example, would be a good distillation of what we should have learned from the civil rights movement, and we would keep that, but we would toss out the actual history of slavery and the civil rights movement.
That's odd. That's weird.
Yeah.
It's hollow then.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's just not enough people that read these comic books, like it's not exactly widespread. But yeah, I think this is all interesting. It's all good stuff. I just don't know how much of it is like conscious by the creator, and how much of it is that they were aware that they were actually trying to do something, or trying to stirred the pot, as they say. Because I have read interviews with Denny O'Neil about his run on Green Lantern with Neil Adams, and they were definitely trying to I guess get the word out that there were people here on Earth that weren't treated very well, and that that maybe we should look to them and try to help them before we go out into the galaxy and try to help people we don't even know. So a lot of people like Denny and even Lynn Wein, I've heard and read in interviews where they also say that they weren't necessarily successful at it, that a lot of times it comes across very, very preachy and heavy-handed, which is another thing that we can talk about, like where does it succeed and where does it fail? Like where do these parallels work and where do they not? Like the X-Men one obviously works, Star Trek works, but where are some of these more political or social ideas that maybe have gone horribly wrong?
I guess you see it more if it's story driven and there's a reason for it versus whether or not it's just thrown in there and you can tell and it's political drivel for political drivel.
Yeah,
I can tell you where Star Trek actually fell down where a lot of people think it did with the original series. If you remember an episode where they go to a planet and they find I think it's the Yangs and starts with a K, I'm not sure. The Cones, the Yangs and the Cones. And it's a society that has suffered a nuclear war, and they've all devolved, and they're all tribalistic, and they've fought for generations against each other. And I think it's the Yangs, which you would actually think were Asian, but they're the American people. They're always like, we have these sacred words here, and we're fighting for them. They're important, and they're great. And, this tale is pretty good. It's like everyone agrees it's an okay story. And then it gets to the end, and Kirk's like, no, this is what this means. And it's the Constitution. And he reads the Constitution, and people are like, like, did you really have to do that? And that point is the point at which stories which are generally directed at children, and I think that's why a lot of adults actually don't like that, is because it's telling them what they should think and telling them what the story of, rather than treating them like a mature person that can think and figure it out on their own. It's the whatchamacallit, the lesson of this day type stuff. Whenever you have that, you're probably in the wrong territory. And that's where you get the propaganda.
Isn't one of the things that we do as parents is to instill like values?
Right, but we expect our kids to learn.
Yeah, but if you instill a value to the kid, like the Constitution, your country, be prideful, those things, is that a bad thing?
No, but it's when you have a TV show or some sort of media that's directed at adults, and you go, and the lesson of today is, it's like, well, I'm an adult. I can pick that up if you did a competent job.
Oh, I see. So you're saying when the entertainment like treats the adult like a child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally, that's a bad thing.
The opposite.
Whenever you talk down to someone, that's a bad thing.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And I think that's what Lin Wein was talking about when he said, a lot of times we didn't succeed because a lot of times you end up becoming heavy-handed with your message. And the message, the heavy-handed nature of it can override even the entertainment factor of what you're trying to do. So always some of the best stuff is when you're trying to get a point across, whatever it is, and the viewer or the person that's reading your book doesn't really realize it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of very matter of fact, and you just enjoy it, and you enjoy the message and all the other things, or it gives you food for thought, and then you debate it and talk about it later. But not where you feel like you're being preached to, or that the message is heavy-handed. And that's a really, really fine line. There's very few people that can, I think, be detached from their political message or their ideology enough to make it where it's entertaining and not heavy-handed.
So that's why the Pontificators are a bad idea.
Because we're getting heavy-handed right here. No, I mean, we're not telling people what to think. We're just kind of, discussing stuff. People can still, assess it and figure it out for themselves. And I think that's always the best way. If you are going to be political in your message or your story, I think what you really need to do is to try to show the pros and cons of it as fairly as possible. Because anytime that you're very one-sided with the message, then it is propaganda, or at the very least, it comes across that way. But if you show both points of view in as fair light as you can, then I think it works better. Because then people can make up their minds what it is. But having said that, I still do think that there are like absolutes in life. There are absolute good and there is absolute evil, so, there's that as well.
Yeah, but if you do a good job, you don't have to tell people the message or even the story, really. I mean, you got a movie like Predestination, where you go into... He's a time traveler, right? He goes back in time, he changes things, and he figures out that he's his own father. Sorry for spoilers, but who cares?
Yes.
Okay, he finds out that he's his own father or grandfather or something like that. And the first thing you think about is, okay, where did he come from then? Like, you don't have to be told that information. You automatically start to think that. Mm-hmm. And so, when you have to go, yeah, you're supposed to think this, that's where the problem is.
Yeah, exactly. When it becomes heavy-handed, or even too one-sided, then it feels like you have an agenda or that you're preaching to somebody, and that's a failed experiment or just not an entertaining story. And I think we're at a crossroads right now with our entertainment, where I believe personally that there's a faction of people that are creating some of the entertainment that we know and love that just don't care about even trying to be fair, and that are full on embracing a political agenda and putting that in their product. And for that, I think, shame on you, because there will be a backlash, and there is a backlash. And it used to be pretty common knowledge that nobody liked to be preached to. Nobody liked to be told what to think or how to think. And when your entertainment starts doing that for you, or your entertainers start telling you how to think and feel, I think that's pretty dangerous territory right there.
Didn't Civil War have something to do with that? Marvel Civil War?
I'm trying to think what the crux of Civil War was. Civil War was, I think, in a nutshell, it was about accountability to the people. So I think it was Bendis's idea that the heroes, since they had secret identities and stuff, could hide behind their own agendas, and that they were saying that they were for the people and they were there to help them, but at the same time they were hiding from them. So it was like transparency, like that whole buzzword now. It's like, oh, transparency, you need complete transparency. Like businesses say that and things like that. But
that was the surface level.
Yeah, right. At its concept, that's kind of what it was, right?
But no, because that's its surface level. But then you have Captain America, who's like, yeah, you know who I am. Like, I reject this. And then you have Peter Parker, who has the opposite side of that, who goes, you don't know who I am. And it's a complete and total dangerous thing for you to know who I am.
Right, that's what I'm going
to accept it.
That's what I'm saying. That's where the political and that's where the divide happened. But in a nutshell, it was about, should we expose ourselves? Should we be transparent to the general populace or not? So even though maybe people knew Steve Rogers was Captain America, they didn't know Peter Parker was Spider-Man. That's why that was so pivotal.
But what I mean is that the reason that Captain America rejected it is because it was forced on him. He was being forced.
Yeah, I just thought it was empathy, because you had a registration, which is funny because we went from mutant registration, it being a civil rights issue, to superhero registration because you're powerful and you can cause damage, and it being then more of a like I said, I equated it more to a Second Amendment issue.
Yeah, well, the government wanted to regulate and control, and that's what government does.
Because
And so,
right, because you had the means to do something that out in the
it wasn't
public.
right.
You
And
have
it
to-
wasn't just, I'm sorry, it wasn't enough that they were powerful, but it was also that people didn't know who they were. Like there was zero accountability, because no one knew who they really were. Like if Peter Parker, or not Peter Parker, but if Spider-Man F's up, where's the accountability? How do you go after Spider-Man? How do you get him to pay for that building he just knocked down? Like there's
Right.
zero accountability to it. But if they knew everything about him, then they could go after him and make restitution, or he can make restitution for the damages or whatever cause and effects that he was responsible for. And I think it's interesting, and this might be the most political, at least in modern comics, that we have an example of.
And it's also part of that was kind of the vigilante aspect of it, right? They're vigilantes, and you're wearing a mask, and there's laws on the books today, everywhere that says you can't run around with a mask and do certain things,
Yeah, vigilantism is outlawed. It's against the law.
And that's what superheroes are doing. So they're
sort of
going to regulate it.
Sort of, kind of. I mean, do you want to have that debate about what actually is vigilantism? Because there's a lot of superheroes that are considered vigilantes, but they're actually not.
Well, I'd say the majority of them are vigilantes.
Well, you got someone like Superman who can't be a vigilante. He physically can't be.
Why?
Because he can see everything and he can hear everything, which means every single action is within his purview to actually take up arms against and react to.
Yeah, but he's still breaking the law by taking action, period.
No, if you see something happening and you can stop it, you have the right and ability to step in. So it's when you actually go seek it out that it's a problem. And it has to be like, you can't, like, again, with Batman, you can go and argue that all of Gotham pretty much is his, so he's free to be anywhere. And so that he just happens to be on the piers that day, and there just happens to be criminals that day. He has the right to be there, and it's his territory, so he's not actually breaking the law as a vigilante.
So if you're saying if the character's on patrol and he's looking for something, then that's vigilantism. But
not even that. Patrol is fine too.
But no, because what Art was saying earlier, because of the accountability factor, and this happens in courts of law all the time, where someone is a bystander and they step in and help someone else, like possibly with a gun, and they shoot a criminal, and they happen to be there. But if you can prove in a court of law that person tried to get themselves in that situation to use it in the first place, then they're held accountable for discharging their firearm.
And either way, there's going to be a trial. Either way, there's going to be a trial. How do you try Batman? There's zero accountability. How do you even get him into court? How do you summons, him to appear in court?
Well, then you got someone like Spider-Man who's like, he can, like, technically patrolling is perfectly legal and you can do that. The thing that you can't do is you can't go into buildings where you don't know things are happening through like direct observation. Now, Spider-Man has his spider sense, but you can't prove that he actually has his spider sense. So what's he gonna do? Is like, no, I had this tingle and I felt that there was a problem going on in that building and it was gonna become a danger to me, so I'm allowed to react to that.
You know what I always wanted to do as a kid, though? I always wanted to do one of those citizens arrests. You know what I mean? Where you can go, you're under arrest. Like, because I guess I had read that in a book or saw it in a movie or something like that. And I always thought, man, that'd be cool, right? If you just make a citizen's arrest. So I do think, I'm not sure how all of the states in the union work, but I think there are laws on the books that say that you can intervene under certain circumstances as a citizen.
Come into your car.
You can go, yeah, that'd be awesome.
You can do everything that the police can do. It's just that the police have undergone training and have easy access to courts, so they can get away with things that you probably wouldn't. But technically, you're allowed to do the exact same thing that they can.
Yeah, well, they're sanctioned by the city, by the state, by the government to do. You know, they have a badge and they're sworn in. So I think as far as back. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, DeWolf.
To pull this back to Civil War and politics, it's interesting that I think it was you that said that this is indeed one of the most politicized storylines that we've seen, but at the same time, I don't think there was anything that came out into the local societal zeitgeist, if you will, where it changed anyone's mind on anything.
Yeah, I think that's why it worked, because also I don't think it was absolutely one-sided. I think that it was done as fairly as possible within the parameters of the Marvel universe. I mean, obviously they can't change things drastically because, you know, reality, like just stuff we're talking about right now, don't work. Those ideas don't really work in the Marvel or DC universe. And if you're trying to scrutinize these characters to that extent, they're just going to fall apart. But I do think there's a lot of Bendis bashing, but I do think that, you know, currently there's a lot of Bendis bashing, but I do think that the idea was pretty sound. And I thought the resolution was pretty good, because even, you know, didn't, you know, like Parker at first was like, no, we shouldn't register. And then he did. And then he paid the price for it. Right.
Yeah. Because he kept on attacking his students while he was trying to teach. Right.
So there was some truth in that. And I can't remember, you know, if there was any like pros with Tony's, because Steve Rogers was still like, he was set against the registration, right, in the comic book version, right?
Yeah.
And then Tony Stark was like pro sign up, right? He was like, kind of, let's work with the government on this.
Yeah, he's part of the government. Yeah.
So I don't remember the resolution. I know it was an epic story over, you know, a bunch of books, but what was the resolution? Was there an actual ideological right and wrong in the story?
Sort of. I mean, you could say, well, according to Marvel lore, that Tony admits he's wrong later on, and they all admit that the whole registration thing is stupid. And while it was going on, because Captain America is the symbol of America, and he's supposed to represent what American values you're supposed to hold and how that would play out against things, it's essentially saying that the government is going against the people by doing these registration acts. And Captain America and the American values and American choice is to rebel against that.
Right, because of the greater good, right?
Well, because it's just wrong, because it's anti-freedom, anti-American values, and all like that.
Yeah, but also the greater good, where society could look the other way. Like if you can fight off an alien invasion, then all of a sudden society's like, yeah, I don't care who these people are. You know, they can fight these freaking aliens. You know what I mean? Like I always thought, like, as long as Batman is actually affecting the statistics in Gotham City, right? That with his presence, crime is going down, then people would be willing to look the other way, and the ends would justify the means. So I think as a society, if you had a group of people, even though they don't quite fit into your laws, but they can stop an alien invasion, you may look the other way.
Well, there's at least 3 different takes on that, because with Batman, the argument there is that, yeah, the general crime rate is going down, but you got psychos coming in that do like 10,000 times more damage when they do something.
You mean
And
because
then
he draws that out, right?
yeah, that's the argument there with him.
Who made
that
who
he
argument, right? Like
Yeah.
did the Batman create the Joker or vice versa? Yeah.
And then you got My Hero Academia, which goes, no, it's right to have a registration. Because they have a registration within their society, and they actually have a villain group now within the story, which is pushing that it's wrong to keep us from using our powers, and it's anti-liberty and all like that.
Yeah, I think the difference is if you create the universe and then there already these laws exist and you're not retrofitting them onto people or characters, then it could work. So if the Marvel Universe at inception had this registration and they were all above board, then, you know what I mean, it would all work. But the reason these things become interesting, like Civil War, is because you're retrofitting these ideas onto the characters that already exist.
With My Hero Academia, the argument is sort of because I think it's 80% of population have powers, and so you're oppressing like everyone that doesn't register, and so it makes more sense that these people can use their powers to fight off against the villains. But that's another thing. You can also just go with City of Heroes lore, and they have a registration too, and they have more of a common mainstream hero levels of people who have powers versus people who don't.
Right. So Todd, you haven't talked in a while, Rooney. We need to hear something.
I don't. Ultimately, if it's well written, I always say this, I guess. I'm sorry, but if it's well written, it doesn't matter what it has in it. Whether it has politics or even if it sort of parallels real events, because it's happened. You know what I mean? And sometimes you parody real events, and that can. So if it's well written, it can be cool. But I don't like anything forced. For instance, I think a lot of the Marvel books these days, it's like these are superheroes dealing with societal problems that are like small, like, we're not allowed to have a Starbucks in our neighborhood type thing. And to me, that's not superheroes, and I'm not taking a real example. I couldn't come up with one, but you kind of get what I mean.
The trivial stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's nonsense. It's
or social justice.
Right. I don't think superheroes belong in that realm at all, because they would obviously not push their superiority, but they're superior beings. So would they be hanging around with like humans and try to fix human problems? I don't think so. I think they'd always be looking at bigger picture problems and maybe global problems. So when you push them towards cafe kind of problems, I just don't I don't agree with that. I don't think you're not building me any stakes. You're just taking on a social issue or a consciousness that you think, oh, I could write something about this. And to me, it's been done. It's been done, and it's been done to death. Give me a reason. Like, give me a really good reason why Galactus would want to eat Earth. You know what I mean? And deal with something like that. And maybe the world tries to stop them, and not just the superheroes. And the superheroes, are involved too. I don't know, but I do not like some of the current stuff that I see in comics, where it's just low-level societal things that these things don't need to be fixed though, or that they're not. They just don't belong in comics.
Well, I totally agree. I think that was well said. Because also when you have your heroes get into SJW type of things, social justice, and get into these type of areas, they lose their integrity. It's like if you had a cop that was overly like social justicey, then their objectivity goes away. And the thing is, if you're dispensing justice and you're you're supposed to be a fair-minded individual, you really shouldn't be taking these sides, because the likelihood of you acting on them is great. So if you do have your characters acting on these kind of more political agenda or social justice type of things, then their objectivity and the fairness is going away, because they're taking a side. And as soon as you have your character take a side like that, then objectivity goes away. Like you want your cops, you want your justice, your courtroom, your judge to be impartial. You want them to be as removed from those things as possible. Otherwise, you start getting into some serious issues. And I think that, if I'm not putting words in your mouth, Todd, that's kind of what you're saying, is that this is too trivial, and that it also diminishes the hero to have them act on these type of, kind of silly social justice kind of ideas.
Yes, exactly. I think it is trivial. It is. They just, I don't see, when I see a superhero and they're doing these type of things, I go, there's just something not accurate about it,
Yeah.
and maybe if it was unique, or for instance, I know a lot of people don't like the whole idea that Thor became, Jane Foster became Thor, but the idea that it was a woman who was, going to die, she had cancer, that kind of, there was something in there that I thought, oh wow, that's unique, that's clever. So there was a charm and cleverness to it. But and I know people don't like the whole transference of characters from, changing their gender, or somebody else becoming Thor who's not Thor. But I did think that story was, and I didn't read it all, kind of a long, and I'm not a huge Russell Duderman fan because he did most of it. But I thought, wow, that's kind of unique, and that is sort of, cancer is one of those big things and stuff like that. And it's not like a social problem, but it is in our social consciousness. And I thought, oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
But it's good. But then it gets into the idea that what they did later with it, like then it becomes like, empowerment for women, or, when they do politicize that story or that idea, that's when, it gets bad. Because like you said, in Inception, it's just another story, right? It's a story. It's a good reason for that to happen. But then if you politicize it and go, this is for girl power, then you are trivializing it, and you're like reducing it down to some kind of like petty political viewpoints, versus just like, well, it's a really heartfelt story, about saving somebody's life.
I agree like 90% with what you're saying, but I think you can have it in there if it's like weighted against what it actually is. Like, let's say you have Peter Parker going to a Starbucks and there's a thing with racism, and he has to intervene at like for some weird reason, and it has some kind of connotation to it. It's there, it's done, and then he moves on.
Yeah, but he's not making the distinction. He's just, once again, being a hero, getting in between the situation, right?
No. I think there, because you guys are using the terms petty and stuff, right? It's when a name is on the line, right? What do you call me, or how do you feel about me? Those types of things are not heroic, and an actual real crime is an actual real crime to stop. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah, because social justice is not a crime. It's not
right.
Not
yeah,
a crime against humanity. It's just kind of based on how you feel about a certain subject. And usually, SJWs will fight they'll find a cause or a person, and then they'll fight for that cause or that person. But that's not necessarily a universal right and wrong. And also, just back to what Todd Mulrooney was saying, is that those are the battles that these heroes should really be getting into. I think, is those epic things. Like, do you want to see your cop drama get into like social justice warrior type of aspects, or do you want to see them, protect, like serve and protect, the neighborhood that they patrol?
Right, but a little bit of that is character, and you have to have that within like the character to have a character. And some of these guys are going to have that view, and so you should have it into a tiny bit. It's just, like I said, it has to be weighted against who they are and what you're actually doing. Having those petty little things, that brings the character down and puts them on the human level. But you can't just keep them like that because they are heroes. They're superheroes. And so you have to have that moment sometimes, but you also have to move past it and have it only like a blink of an eye type thing, and have majority where he's fighting like something beyond him.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing, but what I was trying to say is that it's what people do with it afterwards that politicize it. So it's like, if you have the Jane Foster scenario, which is what Todd brought up, then it's like, the feminists get behind it. It's like, yeah, good, strong female hero, where maybe the agenda in Inception was just a good, Thor story with Jane Foster. You know what I mean? Like maybe it wasn't that, but then, it gets politicized and turned into something like that, and then
it's even
bad. It gets bad there.
It's even more interesting. You were talking about that Starbucks and whether or not the person was part of their social character. Draken was saying, it's more interesting if they're put in the situation where that does involve their social ideology and they don't do anything about it. That they say, you know what, that's beneath what my power level is, and it's a society-driven issue, and they have to work that out amongst themselves, because now you're looking into the character of that person as they now have to go forward on the rest of their life and actually fight crime and supervillains.
All right, DeWolf, you just earned your keep right there. That was perfect. And that's what I think that we were all trying to say, and you just kind of put it all in a nutshell. It's like impartial. You have to be impartial. Like they can't get involved with those things because they are, I was using trivial and things like that, but it's also, in a way, it's not for them to work through or them to really say. But I do believe, like even what Draken was saying, if it's a story, yeah. If it's a character beat, it's a story, yeah. All the above. And you can deal with it in the way that DeWolf was saying and the way Draken was saying. It just depends on the character and what you want to say. It's the sky is the limit. But I think, we were more just like in a general way, like the hero should act this way and they should be kind of presented this way. And also it just depends on what the hero is and what their universe is as well,
Yeah, and some of these characters have been fully established, so they don't have to do it. But some of them, like a lot of the newer characters, they are still learning what it means to be a hero. So you can have a story where they do have a Starbucks scene at the beginning, and then they go and fight someone like super powerful, and then they come back to it, and the same thing is happening again at Starbucks, and they're like, nah, this time that's just beneath me. You can make that, and it can be low key on that.
Yeah, or they get involved with it and then it blows up into a social justice thing, and then they become the villain in the social justice narrative. You know what I mean? Because they did get involved and they took a side, and then it turns against them, and then they realize that they really shouldn't get involved with these things, that they're not really serving the greater good, and that in maybe in essence they're making things worse. They're throwing fuel on the fire by taking a side. Because once again, I mean, we're talking about like more or less like trivial situations, not, world altering, good versus evil type of storylines. These are more like belief systems. These are ideological ideas versus like true good versus evil, like universal truth kind of things.
But if you don't have those characters like reflecting your like the ideology of your society to some degree, then you're kind of not portraying them as heroes. You're just portraying them as punching bags that can punch back really, really hard.
No, like I said, I mean, I'm saying all the above. I'm not singling one out from the other. I'm agreeing with everything that DeWolf said, that Todd said, and that you said. I think it's all good. It just depends on the character, the situation, and what it is that you're truly trying to do. But as a basic, I like my superheroes with a pretty straightforward G versus E. Good versus.
I'm just trying to take over the world.
Yeah. And the reason why is because these characters are fairly simplistic, and we've mentioned it several times on Pontificators in the past, that these really are for younger adults, for kids. So these are kind of, not to get onto my topic, which was morality, but some of these are modern day morality. They're biblical morality tales, and that there is universal truth to standing up to bully. There are certain things that are universally true, and that as a society we kind of like to fantasize that there is a Superman out there that's got our back, especially when we're young. That brings us comfort. Because the world is so big and we're so insecure, and there's not, we don't have much power. But if we know that there's a character out there that we like that is doing that in our fantasy stories, then somehow it kind of brings us some comfort. And I think that those are at the core what these stories should be. But once again, Durakan, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying all the above. There are some characters that these are perfectly fine to do them with. There's certain characters that it's not. And there are certain characters that even if it's not, you can address this in there as a story idea, and then just see how they react to it. You know what I mean? How would Superman react to that situation? What side would he take? Would he take a side? All those things. And I think as a writer and as a creative person, those are fun to play with.
Like, why would Captain Marvel be dealing with any of this stuff that's SJW? She's a military officer, she's a veteran, and she deals with mostly space stuff. Why would she be dealing with any of that stuff?
Exactly, unless you made it like, you did like the Green Lantern thing, like Denny O'Neil did. It's like, while you're out saving the world, the galaxy, this social justice XYZ is happening, and you need to start focusing on the people or the problems here. But I still think that it's all a leap. I don't think some of those things should, especially when they're more obviously agenda driven or propaganda driven. I just don't think that they should be there.
Well, you brought up Captain Marvel. To me, one of the biggest things that happened with the Captain Marvel as the movie went was how she was not portrayed more as this jerk with these character flaws because of the training she got from the Kree, and of course, whether or not that part, how they portrayed the Kree, even was a little bit off. More how they portrayed the Skrull was off. But for me, watching what they did with not showing those character traits as being a problem because of her Kree training was their downfall. You had to make that up kind of in there, and I think that was the part of the problem.
Yeah, I think there's good and bad, character development and story. And do you feel like those ideas that you brought up, are those agenda or those political, or is it bad writing?
Yes, and I think that's what it was. I think it was bad writing and it was politically motivated. That was the agenda, and that's what everybody really, when you start seeing the reviews, they saw that agenda being pressed, where she says, "I got nothing to prove," and she's a strong fighter. She takes advantage of the guy on the motorcycle. She does things in a way that she's crass and she's being a jerk, but it came off as she's being a social justice, a strong female person, instead of saying I'm a Cree outside of my element, that I believe I'm better than everyone else because I was trained as a Cree, that I'm better than everybody else. So it was not the fact that she was a Cree looking down on everybody, but when it hit the big screen and because of all the agenda that driven stuff nature behind it, she's a woman is why she's better than everybody else. And I think that disconnect, if it was portrayed correctly, it would have actually made a great story. Instead, what we got was a disconnect, politically driven type of stuff, and it came off as bad.
Yeah.
Death Metal Hero says Carol was a much better character when she was Warbird and had a drinking problem. She has become as static and one-dimensional as time has gone by. Funny thought. What if the character that was portrayed in the movie would have been that drunk Warbird, and then you could say that it's like, I don't have anything to prove. It was all because she was drunk and all like that.
If she was that as powerful she is, then I don't. Given her, like, again, it's given her a small problem, and not that alcoholism is a small problem, but for a superhero who's super powered, would her metabolism not handle alcohol differently? It just does. To me, it just doesn't jive up. Yeah, there's always something about it doesn't jive up. Tony Stark was a man in a suit whose character made sense that he was alcoholic, because he was a misogynist, and he was a bit of a playboy and a partier. So the whole idea of him being alcoholic makes complete sense. Her, I don't know, seems a little forced.
I agree.
I disagree.
But it does make with Carol Danvers with that character.
Yeah, I think.
But like he says, like her metabolism.
Yeah,
I think I
don't think her power base came from.
Robot.
But that's that. Too.
Did you guys hear that? Because I didn't.
No, I was roboted.
Yeah, say it again, DeWolf.
I think that her power base is dualism, but that's a whole different conversation.
I just think somebody that's super powered, it's just trite to make that person that has superpowers that are whatever, cosmic in nature, whatever nature, to make them alcoholic. A man in a suit, a Batman, a Bruce Wayne, or Tony Stark makes more sense. But you take Hercules. Would you, granted, Hercules is a big drinker. Thor should be a big drinker. Thor's character in mythology was a drunk. But what would their drunk be? You know what I mean? What would their level of drink?
Yeah, and also you're saying you're framing Carol as a drinking problem, not just a drinker. Like Wolverine's a drinker, but can he even really get drunk? Maybe he just, it's just enough to numb the pain, and his metabolism just moves through it very quickly. Who knows? But I think that if you were to make that, Carol Danvers or whatever Warbird character and an alcoholic, I think then you do also, I don't know, I've never read the story, but then you would have to kind of answer Todd's question, which is how does the alcohol work in her metabolism? Does maybe that race is very, like alcohol makes them even more wasted. You know what I mean? Like
a hallucinogenic.
Maybe they have more of a chemical reaction than even humans do. So, if you bring those ideas into it, then all of a sudden, it can work. But it is a good question. to bring up.
I just think there's better places to do it. And again, has it already been done? Has it already been done? Certainly it's been done. And it was done well. And I think it was done with the perfect type of character, considering everything that everything that goes with that character.
The Tony Stark idea, right?
Yeah.
It's genius. It's really, really good. Pablo Romero Art says,
They're super drunk.
Lost it. A character without weakness is boring. Yeah, I totally agree.
That weakness should be about not so much their personality, but should be ingrained into, I don't know. I know it's going to sound, again, sort of corny, but, Superman used to have a problem with magic. I think that type of weakness that shows that, that character has to overcome his weakness to beat that villain. Spider-Man's was always, his butt was always kicked in the first 12 pages. It was the next 10 pages where he dug down deep or scienced the crap out of it, whatever, to beat that character. So yeah, a character with a weakness. But I think there are way too many characters with what I call gray flaws, like alcoholism, drug use, sexual addiction. All those superhero shows that were on Netflix just did not look like superhero shows to me, and look like almost like procedural crime shows based around one character or something like that. You know what I mean? They just were, other than Daredevil was great. And Punisher wasn't bad as far as character wise, but the other ones like Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, that just did not seem like superheroes at all.
Yeah.
It seemed like a guy who happened to have a strong ability and it was impervious to bullets, but he was just so low level and so street. It just didn't seem realistic to me.
Yeah. I have to take a super chat here. We got Skits comic. Skits is coming. And yes, Skits is coming to my YouTube channel this Monday. So if you guys want to find out what Skits is all about, tune in to my YouTube and check it out. And also, if you guys haven't thumbed this chat up, please do so. It helps the algorithms, helps get the word out. And if there's anyone in the chat that hasn't subscribed yet, please do so. I think I'm only 16 away from another 100 subs. So we're on fire here. So thank you guys. And thanks for the super chat. So I'm sorry, Todd, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to get that in before. Sometimes these chats, they just kind of have expiration dates. You can't go back any further. They just get lost. And I've done that with super chats. So thank you also, Durakin, for bringing that to my attention.
If you made Thor a transvestite or whatever you want to
no.
would that be political or not? Because Thor in the mythology does dress up as a woman.
All the time or just once?
At least once. Like for an extended period of time.
I'm gonna let DeWolf handle this one.
There was for it. Like there was a story reason. There was
right. There's a story reason, but you're also dealing
in drag for transvestite. Yeah,
he did it for a reason, right? For the story.
But in the story, he doesn't seem to really have a problem with it.
For a woman, so he was standing in as the bride so that he could, I believe it was, get Mjolnir back. But it's a bigger, it's a bigger story. There's a reason he was there, and then he killed the guy. He put his normal down.
So then you were bringing up that this was politicized or could be politicized.
Well, would you view it as politicized if, based on that mythology, you could say that Thor at some point just decided that he wanted to be a woman? Now,
what?
You had came up with that whole story.
I like
would that be political? considered political?
I don't know. I would consider it horrible. I think all of our response so far has been pretty bad.
Let's take any superhero and say they get into a position where they have to. I have to what?
Oh my god. Yeah, you're going in and out. Is he going in and out for the chat and you guys in the stream, or you hear him?
For us, yes.
Yeah, he's going in and out a little bit.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's your connection. Are you plugged in properly? Because you use a mic, right? Now we can't hear him at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's just a random position. Like, he experienced something, and then from that, he decided something else.
Well,
so it's a logical projection.
God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen to Thor, but it will happen. They will create a character or take a character and go, I don't feel right in my body. I've always saw myself as a woman, and that's fine. It's fine as long as they don't do it to somebody beloved or iconic. It deserves to happen maybe once or whatever, and that's fine. Okay, there's no getting around it. It will, or maybe it hasn't. I just haven't read that story, but I
did really badly with Bobby Drake.
Yeah, I won't even go there. But
anyway, do you think those are designed as propaganda or political? The idea came from that, or do you think the idea with Bobby Drake or like Durakan's idea, like would it? I don't know. Would it be better if it was just a story idea that was created?
I think this is how it came about.
Okay,
and this is. You'll have to forgive me about how I talk, but this is how we used to talk when we were kids, and you'll remember this, Art. Oh my God, ice power? That's gay. So I think somebody thought that character and that power is so lame. We're just going to do this with him.
But I guess what I'm saying is, like, if somebody did like the idea that Durakan came up with, and I agree with you, Todd. Why would they be doing it? Would they be doing it to sell books, or would they be doing it to virtue signal? Would they be doing it for a political agenda? Like, what would even be your motivation to do that with, I think you brought up Thor, right? Or would this be any character?
There's a logical background for it. It's an interesting topic to explore. If you really wanted to explore it, it doesn't have to be agenda driven or whatever in the terms of like being completely the focus of the story, but maybe the character at some point in the past or during story decides that. Would you consider that political, or would that just be another part of the story? Because a lot of people see these things in stories and go, oh, that's just SJW, rather than, that's just a good concept for a story.
Right. I don't know. I don't like any of it. So you taking off, Todd?
He did already.
I'm taking your manly man and turning him into a girl.
I think you broke him. I think
there are characters that would make more sense with, but definitely not Thor. I think Thor get his butt kicked by a lot of
rest of the Asgardians.
Friends. Yeah, his friends would just be like, what the frick, dude? But I think there are characters you could do this with, and you might be able to create a good story about it. I mean, it would definitely have to be handled a certain way, and I'm sure there's nobody going, I'll do it. You know what I mean? I think you'd have to come up with it and go, oh my God, I have this really cool, gender story that I want to do, and will you allow it with such and such? And maybe they go, well, not so much him, but maybe Cloak, and maybe Cloak and Dagger can be more of a lesbian duo. I don't know, but it could. There's somewhere it could work.
Yeah. I think just to try to sum up, and we should probably try to wrap this up soon, is that I just want to be clear. All the above, as far as I'm concerned, because if it's good, it's good. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then it just doesn't. You know what I mean? So a lot of these ideas that we're throwing around, like, I don't know, a hero dressing up like a girl, for 6 issues. on one hand, like right now, it sounds horrific. I can't think of any possible way to make that work. But there may be a writer or somebody that can come up with, a way to make that work where it's entertaining and it's totally cool. So I don't mean to seem like, like I'm set against one thing or the other. Because some of this stuff can work, but I think as far as just making something like a political agenda, that stuff, I think it's fairly transparent, and I would like to see a lot of those trends stop, and just to try to get more into just a pure entertainment aspect of it, and to remember, and I know Todd will back me up on this, and to remember like who the fan base is and what these characters' origins are. You know what I mean? I mean, some of them might have been like a little bit, more like social justicey, but some of them weren't. So, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But I kind of like my superhero comics fairly G versus E, like pretty straightforward. I'm not set against complications and stuff, but I think I like him more straightforward. And it also depends on the characters. Like when I say straightforward, what I mean is like mainly Marvel DC characters. Like if you're doing Elseworlds tales, like we've talked on Pontificators, or you're doing future type stories and things, I think you can kind of go off on tangents and do some of these stranger ideas. But I think for the mainstream, universes, I don't like it personally.
You're exactly. I don't. If your superhero is not fighting his rogues gallery or his supervillains, or even some kind of threat that's equal or not better than him, then the character is not interesting whatsoever to me. And I absolutely agree. If it's not that way, then it's not interesting. And I don't really. I won't even follow along that story. Now, I'm not saying, okay, there was a really cool story, and I know you're going to remember this one, Art. It was the boy who knew Spider-Man, and it was a one-off, and I actually found out later it was sitting in a drawer for a long time, so it was used as one of those things where when we have a F-up or something, we'll just fit this in there, and it actually won a bunch of awards, and it was about a boy who was being abused. And Spider-Man I don't know if he was swinging by or something, he overheard something, and he intervened in this boy's life. The absolute greatest story of all time, that is it doesn't get put on any list. I never really see it on any list, but it was very pivotal.
Because the kid was clearly being abused, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was actually a little black boy, by the way. So
yeah. So the thing is, it wasn't like it was like some of the SJW stuff. Like this was clearly like abuse. So when you go in there, it's kind of social justicey. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, it's not as trivial or as petty as like some of the social justice stuff that we hear about now. So it wasn't a battle of ideology. I mean, that kid was, he was being abused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Somebody, and if you have never read this story, anyone out there, you should look it up.
Yeah, I think that sometimes these stories with social relevance, they should, and they do fit into comics. But I think when they're more agenda driven or more left or right leaning, then I think we get into problems. If they're fair, it works. Like we were saying earlier, if there's kind of a definite effort to see it from both sides of the fence. Not that but with more complex, more ideological ideas versus an actual crime. You know what I mean? Like something that's more like two people disagree on, a belief system. Those are a little tougher to deal with, and especially to deal with in a way that doesn't seem like it's propaganda, or you're taking one side or the other.
The Picard Enterprise was constantly intervening in political affairs. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
I didn't really watch the show too much.
Yeah,
I would
I
say like
analyzed
about
that.
60% of what they were doing was somehow intervening in some political strife or political mess or something.
But that show was structured where they were peacekeepers, though. They're not exactly. That's not exactly a true G versus E concept because
No.
yeah.
I'm not
So
saying that. I'm just saying it was. I don't. I think there. Like I guess what I'm saying is there's a way to do it, and it not seemed forced or tied to Black Lives Matter or the Me Too
okay,
movement. There's a
yeah,
way
yeah,
to do it and tie it. Like again, the mutant thing. It sort of paralleled a lot of things. Like he said, rights and human rights and stuff like that. It parallels a lot of things, and so it works. And it doesn't seem contrived or forced. And I do think the mutants, without it being one of the quotients, is a little more boring than not. You know what I
Well,
mean? I
it's
think
also what makes them fairly original.
exactly. I think so. Exactly. That they don't fit in, and they're trying, and they shouldn't be seen as somebody. Like you're rooting for them, and you don't even realize it because it's really usually not the heart of the story, but it's the heart of their issue.
Yeah, and it gets into a more universal truth. This is why some of these things work and some of them don't, is because the universal truth is everybody has felt like an outsider and everybody has been bullied by, society on some level, whether it's the schoolyard or, at your job or whatever it is. So I think it's a fairly relatable idea. So that's an example of it being done very well at its core, at its inception.
Google too says, "Art, I don't like any of it." So true. Follow your gut. And the metal says, "Just follow the Socratic dialogue. It works. If you can't handle that, stick to G versus E."
Yeah, yeah, and once again, like we've said, it really does depend on the IP. It depends on the character and the universe that character lives in. What you can do and what you can't do, because there are parameters that have been established. Clear parameters in a DC universe and a Marvel universe. And I'm not saying that they can't be played with or like messed with, but like we've said on other Pontificators shows, that the core should always still be intact. What's that?
A recent story that I thought was really good was in Green Lantern. Funny you mentioned Green Lantern, and he was visited, like he was in the cockpit of something he was flying, and he was visited, or he was seeing images of his father, and the way it was handled was really well done. And I don't remember the gist of the story, but I just thought, wow, that's one of those. Every once in a while, there's an issue that should win like issue of the year, and it's just like the Deadpool issue with Santa Claus. That should have been like issue of the year. Nick Klein and I forget who wrote it. God, was it Chip? No, Scotty Young. I think it was Scotty Young that wrote it, and Nick Klein drew it. It was a Deadpool issue, and it was a fantastic issue. So
Yeah.
every once in a while, you do get these outliers that have nothing to do with, supervillains and stuff like that, and they will hit a chord with you. It's when it's overdone and forced and contrived and pushed on you that doesn't jive.
Yeah, it either connects, or it doesn't. And the thing is, like universal truths, things that people can relate to, those are usually the things that will resonate with people. Things that don't feel right, like some of the social justice agendas that are being forced, especially in Marvel, people just don't latch onto them. Because it isn't really, it's not tangible. It's not relatable, I guess, is the word. Not in the truest sense, in a humanistic way. It's contrived and forced, and then the outcome is basically worked out for you. You're not expected to think about it. You're just expected to accept it. And if you don't accept it, then you're called racist or a homophobe or whatever, whatever comes out of that. And yeah, this is not entertainment. This is something, quite different. And
Yeah, generally, when you're calling your audience terrible things, you probably messed up. That's just, like, yeah, the people who are reading this, you're a terrible person. Like,
yeah. Oh, you
dang.
don't get this? You don't like this? Well, then you're a white male homophobe. Wait a minute! I just paid for that book. I love Marvel Comics. Why are you doing this to me?
But even that you can get away with sometimes, because Star Trek does it all the time in like the later things. They're anti-male and pro-feminist agenda like throughout that entire thing. If you start watching it and start paying attention to it and analyze everything, it's like, oh no, like that's not a good message right there. It's like, you just called me a bad person.
Are you talking about the new Star Trek?
No. Well, Star Trek Discovery is more blunt about it, but the Next Generation and Enterprise and those shows, they're bad. There's one where they're pretty blunt about it in DS9, where Jadzia Dex is walking around and she just has like, oh, I'm so hot, and everyone looking at me is such a creeper. It's like, like, what? You're just saying that all men are bad. Why would you say that?
Yeah, because you're isolating your audience and you're attacking them. It doesn't make good business. I'm not really sure why they're doing that, other than that maybe they're trying to create a different or a new unique revenue stream by tailoring the product to a certain group of people. But at the same time, it seems like it's an all or nothing kind of business venture. You know what I mean? It's like, we're going to ostracize our fan base to try to get this new fan base versus try to homogenize and do for both. And this is kind of off topic a little bit, but with what I'm saying to illustrate, I have a friend, very smart person. He manages and he's an engineer for the Disney Corporation. And he told me, because he's an older guy like I am, and he said, he's working with a lot of younger people coming in and different managers. Like, there's people that are younger than him that are managing him and that are his bosses. And what they do, what they teach in school now, management-wise, is that you come into a business and you completely dismantle it and then rebuild it from scratch. You don't go in and evaluate and see what's working and what's not working. You just completely revamp it. So that's kind of the new mindset as far as managing and running businesses. So if you think about that, a lot of the Marvel stuff makes a little bit more sense, because they try to think like, why are they doing this? And the only thing I can think of is they're just like, the old paradigm, the old way of doing business just clearly doesn't work. So instead of like doing a homogenization of like evaluate what's working, what's not working, they're just all about destroying the old and creating a new. And if you want to see that template being played out, just watch the 3 Disney Star Wars movies. Like, that is, it's the methodology there is clear cut, that they're just, and they even say there's a bit of dialogue for the old, like, you have to kill the past or whatever, like whatever Kylo Ren says. I can't remember the actual quote, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the mindset. And, we'll see if it works out for them in the long run, but it seems fairly short-sighted, but it is being taught in a lot of business schools right now.
Since you brought it up, Star Wars, what's your take on the 3rd movie?
I just like with the prequel movies, I was so disgusted by the 2nd movie. I did not see the 3rd movie in the theater, and I still have only seen what's the last of the prequels called? I can't remember. But I did not. I only saw it once. I think I saw it on Netflix or something like that for free. I did not buy it. and the new Rise of Skywalker. I didn't go see it in the theater. Not, I guess it's my own little boycott, but I just think like after what Rian Johnson did, I did not see any clear creative way to redeem or to make the last movie enjoyable on any level. So I just figured, why go? Did you see it, Draken?
I would say it's the fourth best movie of
Are
the
you
Star Trek
kidding
movie.
me? You're kidding,
And-
right? You're giving
And
me
I don't
shit.
like J.J. Abrams or Star Wars, so but it does take Rey, and it does build her character immediately up in the thing, so she's no longer a Mary Sue. There are some things in it that I'm like, yeah, that's stupid. They shouldn't have done that. Like the scene that everyone has seen with the lightning bolts, and she's got the sabers. I'm like, that's stupid, but whatever.
Well, now I know why Todd hates you.
What I'd actually like take that movie and erase the first two in the trilogy and use that as the basis of a new trilogy.
Well, also you're projecting on this movie. You're not quite accepting. Oh, Todd, I just now
Yes,
saw.
I am.
On
To
what?
a certain degree, yeah, I am. Like going, yeah, those just shouldn't be there. And if you just ignore those, then the story works perfectly fine because it doesn't have that baggage there. But
Well, you
with
know
the
what?
baggage,
If you just ignore the J.J. Abrams Disney stuff, the six work perfectly as well.
can I just
Right.
ignore J.J. Abrams in general because he ruins everything?
Well, there was a little person, a little round-headed person named Rian Johnson that had a little bit to say in that matter.
He the last movie, by the way, beat my expectations. That's all. I'll
Which
say.
last the Rise of Skywalker
Yeah, the Rise of Skywalker. I saw it.
beat your expectations?
Beat my expectations by quite a bit. Now, if
So-
they came out tomorrow and said, "Hey, what we're doing with the next 3 movies is we're going back to the beginning of where Jedi began," that would be like, "Oh my God! Now we're going somewhere. That's awesome." But I think you almost have to you have to move past and away from anything George Lucas did. And it's and you look at like Rogue One and Mandalorian; those are good. You could find flaws in anything, obviously, but if you move far past that stuff and go, "Hey, we're going to the beginnings of the first temple and the very first teachings and this, that, and the other thing," I would be in like Flynn.
I think that's
Yeah,
a
I
great
like more stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and that's what they should do. So everybody over at Lucasfilms, LucasArts, listen to Todd. That's a great idea. Yeah, I like that idea.
It's just one way to like put a lot of this negativity behind you.
Well, I thought too, like I've said, like, how there's Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. I thought like what would be great is like that there's a Jedi a temple or a Sith temple. Like if you start getting into that stuff, then you can actually build on the mythology. It's there, but it's not really. It's never really been fully illustrated. Like to this day, the films still haven't really got into what a Sith is. Like
Right.
what
Right.
are they? Like you don't really know. Oh, they're the Dark Jedi, but what's the origin? Where did it go wrong? Why did they do what they do? Because then you could actually create this great epic kind of
Cain and Abel kind of thing.
Or like Xavier versus Magneto kind of ideological belief system. And then you could realistically, you could bring a gray area. You could bring gray areas ideas into the Star Wars universe, which is one thing that I've always fought with. Like Star Wars is not really a IP that would work. But if you kind of reconstruct it like you're talking about, Todd, and you go back to the beginnings, then you could say that there was always this divide and that it could be kind of gray area. You know what I mean? Like who's right, who's wrong. Because Vader did step up. Vader did save the day at the end. Anakin did. And he was a Sith.
Yeah, it would be.
And that should have
interesting to
been
do
looked at as the pivotal moment. And it shouldn't, as much look, Luke Skywalker was a kind of a messed up character, to be honest. You know, he wasn't as much a hero as he was a good pilot. To be honest, you know what I mean? Really, what did it come down to? He was a good pilot. So that makes him a hero. But was he a good Jedi? Now, Darth Vader was a bad Jedi, but a good Jedi. You know what I mean? Like, okay, he was bad, but had his heroic moment at the end. And it kind of gets taken away because Palpatine isn't really dead. But that is a good moment, you know? It's better than any moment that Skywalker had.
Yeah,
No, I disagree. Like, I think Luke was the ultimate hero because to redeem his father, he was willing to die. You know, he actually was a true, you know, like he understood the scenario, and so he put down his sword, and he believed in his dad, and he believed that his dad would do the right thing. So it was his self-sacrifice, or his potential self-sacrifice, is what inspired Anakin to go against the Emperor at the end, because he couldn't strike down his kid. His kid wasn't going to fight back anymore. And they also showed before that Luke and Vader were pretty even matched, man. Like, Luke was a pretty badass Jedi in that final battle. You know what I mean? Because he chose to not actually defeat his dad. He chose to inspire his dad. And I think that's almost more badass. In not so much like he conquered him physically, but he kind of, you know, inspired him to be good. I like it. I think it's one of my favorite cinematic hero moments of all time. I don't think that scenario always works, but in the original 3 Star Wars movies, I thought it worked perfectly. You know, that Luke, you know, like you said, like his only basic skill was that he could fly. He could fly very well, and that he kind of had this kind of, he could go into this Jedi thing, like he was, what do you call it, where he was akin to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the only reason we think he can fly very well is because we were told. Do you know that, right? It's like,
well, you got to see it at the end where he makes the shot. That was 1 in a million, kid. Now let's go home. You know, so
yeah.
Which was all because of the Force, which means his piloting wasn't actually necessary at all.
Well, yeah, actually, well, maybe it's a little 50-50. You know, I don't know. You know, but I don't know. At the moment, it sincerely worked for me, man. You know, but yeah. So I guess the politics in comics and all that pish posh has we've moved on from. So do you guys want to call it a night?
Sure.
All right,
Death
man.
Metal Hero. I personally disavow all 3 of the New Wars trilogy movies. The Skywalker saga ended with Return of the Jedi. The Mandalorian is a nice epilogue of what the universe is like after the fall of the Empire.
Yes, I completely agree. Yeah, the Skywalker tale was told. This actually became more the what's the villain's name? The Emperor.
Kylo Ren.
No, it starts with a P.
Snoke, Palpatine.
Palpatine. Yeah, this 3 was actually more the Palpatine story, you know, than the Skywalker, because Rey is not a Skywalker; she's a Palpatine.
And the Skywalkers all got killed.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, thank you so much, Level 4. I appreciate it. Got my black and white today. Looks great. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Was it red all over Level 4?
Oh my gosh. Did you know that was the letter column name? And I didn't come up with that. We actually did a poll, and the fans came up with that. Black and white and red all over. That was
back in the day when TM Maple used to write in all the time.
Yeah. The day when you could write in, and if you stumped the Marvel editors, you'd get a no prize. Which literally was a no prize. You get nothing.
Really? There was no particular prize that they gave out?
Oh, you never heard this, Todd?
No. I always assumed it was just something.
No. Okay, so the idea was if you stump, you know, the Marvel staff, that they'll give you no prize. And it wasn't just a clever like, oh, you get something, but we won't tell you what it is.
Right.
No, you didn't get anything.
Oh wow.
They would just say you get the no prize. You
All
win
these
the no
years.
prize. Which was kind of like where Cecil was, teasing Cash Grab, and he's like, it's just going to be a book of blank pages, because it's Cash Grab.
Right.
Yeah. So, we got a rim shot. I need to get a drum in here and do a little rim shot for a Death Metal Hero. Yeah. So, man, this was a lot of fun, and I want to thank Todd DeWolf for coming up with that. That was a great topic, and we had a lot of fun talking that to death. And I think we got a great bunch of guys here because we don't always agree, but we seem to somehow keep it civil, which is good
For now.
for now.
You're all wrong. I'll shoot you later.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This is also saying I'm saying this now without Chester in the chat. So Chester definitely has to poke the bear.
I refuse to go to the West Coast.
What?
So you're safe.
Okay. Yeah. Don't poke T Bear because I'll kill you. I won't kill you.
No, if I ever go to the West Coast, that's when San Andreas Fault and like the super volcano will go off. So I'll die in it. That's what'll happen.
Well, just let me know before you come because I'll make sure that I'm, on vacation or something. So I'm not here when the catastrophe happens here. Yeah. All right, man. Well, wait. Todd had, I'm sorry, man, because I'm bopping back and forth. I apologize, Todd, between YouTube and StreamYard because StreamYard is not giving me the chat, which is really, really odd.
It's giving it to me, but it goes away, and then I gotta hit it again, and it'll come back.
Actually, you know what? I just refreshed and it showed up. So I should have done that earlier because this would have been a better show. So there. So I'm gonna highlight this now because I can. Rim shot. Badoonch. Level 4 got the patch as well. The patches. I thought you meant like the art patch. Yeah. Oh, cool, man. Hey, you know what? Level 4. When you get it on the jacket, take a picture of it and send it to me, and I'll post it around because that'll be cool to see on actually on your backpacks or jackets and stuff like that. Those patches came out really cool. I want to do another series of patches for the Chrono Mechanics campaign, and I don't want to derail this totally, but we're kind of going this way with Todd stuff anyway. We're only 1,500, I believe, away from the next stretch goal. So I need to be inspired for a stretch goal to take that one's place. So maybe I will do patches, some chrono patches. That'll be cool.
Or you could give me all that money because that's the entire goal of my fund.
Oh my gosh. No, absolutely not. All right. So Todd, what we're looking at right now?
Oh, I just finished inking this explosion while we were talking.
Oh, you're doing the little kind of debris mist effects or smoke effects too, right? On the black?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Can you blow that up? Is this Photoshop or what is this in?
I can blow it up.
Ooh. Looks like a bunch of mini explosions in one. Ooh, look at the texture on the outside. Oh, very cool, man. Very cool.
So that's what I've been sitting here doing. Because when we started, I only had a little bit of it, but I finished it off.
Can you go back in your history and show us like a before and after?
No.
Yeah, just erase all your work.
I could go to the last save, but it's only going to be. It saves every 15 minutes on its own.
Oh, okay.
Which is very handy.
That is very handy. I actually screwed up the other day in my Photoshop, which was horrible.
Yeah. I'll tell you what you can't do in Photoshop is this, and this is why a lot of people are hoping that they actually up the game in their color, because the only difference between what they can do in Photoshop is two things. Well, one, they don't have the range of colors, and two is channels. And I don't know if you've ever colored in channels. Some people don't even know how to use them, but really good colorists know how to, like, if something looks too cool or too warm or whatever, they can affect certain layers just in channels. So they could just group them together and go, okay, I need this to be cooler, and it'll affect just the right things. You know what I mean?
I think you can do that in Photoshop.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's the only difference. They if they get to this point where you can work in channels, and if they add the range of colors, then this will be like Photoshop will be obsolete.
Is this Studio Clip Art? What is this?
Yeah, this is Clip Studio.
Okay.
Because the thing you can't do is rotate in Photoshop, which kills you.
No, you can do that in Photoshop. I just don't know how to do it.
You can't do it as fluid as what you're doing though, because that increments, and it looks like you can just kind of wrap that whole thing around.
You can actually move a slider to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, you can't. Photoshop does have the feature, but I think they're set increments versus all increments. Like you look like you can do it like flawlessly all the way around.
Right.
And you can do it at a lever. I think Photoshop is a lot more intricate to do that. Yeah, I gotta get with the times. I'm doing a lot more Photoshop work these days, and I'm realizing that it's either my skill level, which is probably the case, or just the program that I'm using. It's kind of slowing me down because this you're using a stylus, right? A pen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, that's the difference. I need to get something. I have one of those Wacom tablets. I just have to, get some time to actually work with it and figure out how to do it. But that looks good, man. That looks very good, Todd.
Thank you.
Todd's now watching us with.
I was going to try to show you like the thing I draw on, but I don't know why this little camera thing is here.
Chrono patches would be awesome.
Yes, I think that'll be the next tier or the next stretch goal. So I will be doing that. Thank you, Simon. Yes. So rotation can be done in Photoshop. We have a backup here. So we have Raging Goblin still waiting on Black and White. Receive Flying Fortress and Earthworm Jim today. Oh, very cool. 2 in 1 day. That's awesome. December and January have been huge for Comicsgate projects. Something in the mail almost every day. Cool. Thank you so much, Raging Goblin, for backing all these campaigns, specifically mine. And Pamela, my wife, who is fulfilling the Black and White books, she is getting books out every day. So we're looking at probably the first week of February to be February, January. Yes. First week of February to get all the Black and White books done and fulfilled. And also I'm hammering down a deal if there's anybody that likes cool covers. I did a Vampirilla Black and White variant cover for Dynamite, and we're going to run an Indiegogo campaign for that as well. And I just got Kyle Higgins on board to do the coloring on that. So that thing's rock.
So what's your timeline with Chrono Mechanics? Are you just going to go right into fulfillment of that right after Black and White is done?
Yeah, what I'm hoping, and Narwhal's talking cocky, man. He's like, want to finish in January, but I'm not even sure I'll be finished in January, by the end of January, I should say. So a tentative date is to get it done by the end of January. The only thing that's kind of slowing me down right now with fulfillment, because I would not fulfillment, but going to print, is that I want to make sure that the numbers are high enough when I go to print. And if it's only a month from now or even 2 months from now, I don't know if the print run will be high enough to get me a good per book price breakdown.
So what is your number for that? Is it like, it's like 750 minimum, or?
I think usually print runs to get the good break is about 1,000 books. So I think we're at 400 now. So I would have to sell or get at least 600 more backers to reach that goal. But what I am going to do, regardless, is I'm not going to wait till I get that many backers, because it's just not fair to the backers that have backed it, up to this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm hoping that within that amount of time, because I'm going to work it real hard, you guys. January, like second week of January through February, I'm going to be blitzing this campaign to try to get the numbers up. And regardless, well, hopefully, what I'm trying to say is that we'll have the numbers closer to 1,000, that I can take a leap of faith and still do 1,000 print run without taking a bath on it. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, from what I've seen with like the digital print stuff, like if you are under 500, then it's better to go with the digital prints like Greco printing and Mixum. But if you get above that 500 mark, then it starts being that you want to go with the other, like, other printer, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And then you start getting those benefits.
Yeah, trust me, I'm going to be looking into all the above, but I'm also I don't know if I should share this, but I'm talking with other people, like distributors and things, that if I do go 1,000 print run on the Chrono campaign, that I might be able to sell the rest in a different venue. I'm looking into it anyway, just to try to justify that print run, because it really is a good price breakdown, and it was what the campaign financially had in mind, as far as the financial matrix or metrics were concerned.
Otherwise, you're just going to store them in your house, or do you have a storage facility somewhere?
Yeah, well, if I get 600 backers, which that's what I'm realistically thinking I might be able to do in that amount of time, then yeah, I'd have to store 400 books, and each box is maybe 60 books. So it wouldn't be too bad in the garage, because I have 1,500 black and white books in the garage right now. So yeah, I think I could make it work.
Have you looked at Amazon, having them as like whatever it's called, the storage place, and then whenever someone wants to buy it off of there, they can just buy it off there, and they handle the shipping and everything?
How do you do that? Do you ship those books to Amazon? Is that how? And then they just warehouse them?
I haven't done it directly, but that's apparently what you do.
Okay. Oh man.
I think J. Cheryl Finney and Cat does that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's all the above right now. So I'm looking into things that I can do, because I really want to get that 1,000 print run, because that's financially what we've built everything on. So that would be good. So Raging Goblin says, dude, I totally need Chrono patches. I have patches from so many other Comicsgate projects. I am going to have a CG jacket. Yeah, man, take pictures of that jacket, bring them in. So Todd, is that an indie project that you're working on? Do you want to talk about the project that you showed that panel, or is this all hush hush?
It's like a lot of people think I'm working on Thor, but it's, Thor's in this. That's all I'll say.
Okay. Didn't say much, but
I have a question for you.
No. Yes.
Do any publishers contact you and say, I know, I don't want to take away what you do from Indiegogo, but we'd like to, put out such, your book as a trade paperback through us, or anything like that in that vein?
I have even like kind of middle upper tier, and it's mainly with Chrono Mechanics of all things, but they just can't offer me. A lot of them want to own the IP, even though some of them, the contracts say that they want to own the IP. Some of them say they want to kind of have them for 3 years, the rights to publish for 3 years. There's a lot of ownership, and a lot of like that they want movie rights or different things. And so they can't pay me enough up front to make it really worthwhile. I mean, if they were going to want to buy the rights, for 3 years or whatever, they should actually put money on the table. But a lot of them aren't willing to or can't because they just don't have the money. So the best they can offer is a back end gamble. You know what I mean? But a back end gamble that I've already signed a 3-year contract, and I've pretty much given you my IP for the duration of that contract. That's not a lot, in return for such a leap of faith on my end. So I have been offered those things, but they're not as good as like bringing these ideas directly to the people, like what we're doing right now. It makes way more sense financially to just bring these books and these IPs directly to the people, sell them through Indiegogo. And like with Black and White, my wife and I, Pamela, she's the editor and she's also the co-writer on a lot of projects I do. We've been talking about possibly, bringing some of the campaigns back, or doing Hack Shack Studios jam campaigns, where we can maybe do like Chrono and Black and White combinations, in an Indiegogo campaign, and just different things, and maybe different Indiegogos where we can do price breaks too, where maybe we can bring down some of the prices as far as doing maybe a newsprint version of the book, things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that we've been talking about. It's just a matter of timing, trying to figure out how the money is going to work, and if there's a demand for it, if people would want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see like 2 major hiccups with the crowdfunding thing, and that's getting the backer numbers up, because you're spreading the creator cost across those books, and there's not enough backers to lower that price down enough. So you're always going to have that book at very expensive prices.
Yeah,
and the other one.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The other one is distribution, and that's to international, and that's because international shipping is always like $25 to $30 no matter where you go. So you've got to figure out that thing too. If we can figure out those 2 things, one is just time really, and the other is someone has to figure it out and set it up.
Yeah, and so the way I'm looking at it now is like boutique high-end books. So what I still ideally want to do with Chrono is I want it to, the initial idea was to do some foil enhancements, do it in more of a traditional graphic novel format where it's square bound and it's got the hard, cardboard stock cover, upgrade the paper, and just kind of make it more of a unique, one-of-a-kind book, which is still my goal, to do it more as like a collectible book versus, just kind of like a monthly type of Marvel DC book. And then possibly, which I want to talk to Peter Simeti, and I've talked around Peter Simeti with a lot of people that have worked with him, but I haven't had a direct conversation with him yet about this newsprint idea. And Chung Lee, he's a friend, he just lives down the freeway from me. He's got a printer here locally in California that he's going to do his books through. And he's going to do a version of it that's newsprint. And his campaign's pretty successful right now. So that's, playing with price breaks, or price points where you could do your high-end collectible with all your stretch goals. And, like basically you're creating this one-of-a-kind collectible book. And then you can do one that's more like entry level, where you can bring the price down a little bit because the production costs aren't, as high. But it'll be more, it'll be more like kind of standardized version versus
the cheap thing for that is Amazon. They do print on demand. So you just have to upload the print files and they take care of everything else.
Somebody in one of the DM chat rooms was talking about that. Yeah, like it's all the above. So I'm looking into everything. It's just there's only so many hours in a day. So yeah, it's all on the table. It's just a matter of focusing and figuring out which is the best way to go about it with the project that we would be doing it with. So
Yeah, and looking at how the people react to it, because part of the value of the book is in the fact that it's a single print line. If you have multiple print lines, which is what on demand does, you're kind of devaluing every single one of those prints as pretty much worthless except for what they pay for it.
right.
And then that first print is actually the really, really good one.
Yeah, Marvel used to do it really well, and I still want to do it so bad. Is that in the day, uh, they would have your initial print run, you're based on your diamond orders and stuff like that, and then if there was a demand for it, Marvel would do a second printing, but they would do a second printing with a solid gold cover. It wasn't necessarily enhanced, but sometimes they would be later. But they were just kind of printed in kind of just a gold or a platinum or like a copper color. So it would be instead of the white parts of the cover, like if it was just black and white artwork, it was black with the silver or black with the gold. And they were really cool. And those second printings sometimes were the bigger collectibles than the first printing. So I would love to do that. Like if I did, like a newsprint version to make it also collectible, do it with some kind of, like one of a kind type cover. Because if you just printed it with a gold or like the same cover, but in a gold or silver as like a volume 2 or like a second print run, then, it is a variant and it becomes collectible in its own right. So even though it's newsprint and it doesn't have the square bound, spine and everything, it does have a unique collectible aspect to it. And I used to dig that. And those books sold like crazy, man. Yeah. Hey, we have Arthur Brown in the chat. Did Chung do Battle Maiden Knuckle Bomb with the same local printer because that book looked amazing when I got it? I'm not sure who he printed with for the first print run, but he and I were supposed to take a trip down to the printer. It's in LA, and we still might go down and just talk with the guy personally. And I like the idea of going with a local printer as well, because a lot of the black and white trading cards, the ash can, and some of the various stretch goals we had printed here, and we had way less hassle. When there was a problem, we could deal with them directly, face to face. And I like that. Dealing with global PSD, I'm going to do a stream on this, you guys. You wait, it's going to come soon. I cannot say anything nice about that printing company other than they did a killer job. But to get to that point, it was a lot of trouble, and that was through China, and there were all kinds of delays and problems. And I think if they had to see me come in and deal with me face to face, I don't think any of those things would happen or would have happened. Because they would have had to been screwing me to my face. You know what I mean? Like, I know that sounded weird, but you know what I mean? Like they would have had to look at me and then, screw me over, versus do it through an email or, like with, in another country. So I think it's harder to mess somebody around when you're dealing with them face to face.
Yeah. Death of Metal Hero says Brian Polito does his prestige collectible 48-page Lady Death books on Kickstarter and then puts out the same story through previews as 2 issues. See, I have a similar idea, is that you get them like together and you put out not omnibus but pretty much trade paperbacks, and then you upload the single issues to Amazon and just let them take care of that, because that's kind of within my price range, but it seems to be the best option, because then you have those print runs that are unique and you can do those cool things with, but then you also have people that can go and look at those issues whenever they want and get in on it as they come on board.
Yeah, it's all the above. Also, I've been playing with ideas of doing, like just do a PDF campaign where I just make the PDFs available. But that would be the very last thing I do, you know, because you want to do all the options before you do the PDFs, because the PDFs will probably have its own market. Like each one of these different versions, what I'm hoping will have their own market. So you have your bells and whistles version, your highly collectible sought after version, that has all the stretch goals attached and the killer campaign. And then you have your more standardized version, like a newsprint, which is less money, but you also don't have all of the bells and whistles, and you don't have all the stretch goals, which end up costing you money too. And then you do, like a trade paperback, where if it is serialized or there's multiple stories that you can compile, then you do your killer trade paperback, maybe even a hardback version of it. And then you have all your behind the scenes drawings in there. You have maybe some of the scripts, and the different writing and all those things in that version. And then you do a PDF version of the book. And then you can always pursue the mainstream through Diamond. That's always on the table, because it doesn't have to be tomorrow, because there's no real expiration date on the material. So you can still offer it through Diamond or whatever down the line.
I know you disagree with me on this, but I do the PDF version first, because then you can get that audience from that audience to then maybe go and back those other ones.
I did that with with Black and White. Black and White had a PDF, and we had multiple PDF versions. But I do think that people want to see the comic more so. So and I do, on some level, I agree with EVS and Zach, your boy, where they're kind of talking about more streamlined campaigns. Like, this campaign is just for this variant cover, or this campaign is just for this specific thing, because I think it gets a little complicated if you offer too many different things. So at least at this point, the order I'm looking at is what I just said, where it seems to make the most logical sense, because even Marvel and DC don't put out the PDFs first and foremost. They wait till the newsstand version or the direct market version sells, and then they offer the PDF like a week or a month later or whatever it is. Okay.
Thank you, Arthur Brown.
I'll get to that. Would be super cool to see Black and White published through Alterna and in previews. Could then pitch it to people in the comic shop. Oh yeah, I think you work at a comic shop, Death Metal Hero. But also, I think if you manage the store, or if you know the manager, you guys can talk to me directly, and I can give you a discount, possibly a store discount, if you buy in bulk, and you can carry them in your shop that way as well. So if there's anybody that's a shop owner that's out there in the chat, I can do the same for you guys as well. So the reason Diamond isn't, or previews isn't, that attractive for me is they take 20% right off the top, and also they charge you for the ads. And to really be successful, I think in Diamond, you want to take a full page ad out. Otherwise, I think you just get buried in that, the myriad of different titles and publishers. And I have talked to Image about publishing, Chrono and Black and White, but it's also through Diamond, and then Image takes their cut as well. And it just doesn't make good business sense. These Indiegogo campaigns and doing it this way is way more.
Did you tell Image they already got their cut?
They already got. Yeah, they originally got their cut way back when. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, because that wasn't just the flat fee. That was based on a percentage. So they made more than just the way they, because now they just have a flat fee of, was it $1,200 or $2,400?
24, 25, yeah, something like
Yeah, $100 that you pay. In the day, it was like, I don't know, I can't think of the percentage now, but you paid them X amount of, an X percentage of the book sales. And Chrono or Black and White sold 1.5 million copies, I think it was. No,
Wow.
it was 700. It was almost 1 million copies between the 3 books. Yeah.
Yeah, and to get that the $2,500 to pay that with the copies, that's like only what 20. It's only like 5,000 copies. So doing the math.
Yeah. So this is cool. I mean, there are a few people that have made $1 million through crowdfunding recently in recent history, this past year. So it can be done, and it's not. I'm not saying that I'll be able to match that, but there is a template for it. You know what I mean? There is that door has been opened, and so if one person can do it, then another person can do it as well.
Do you remember what you made at Image with Black and White? You personally, not overall, but like at the end of the day, I did this amount on it.
Yeah, it was several hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice, huh?
Yeah, it might have even been more.
It's hard to bring those days back, isn't it?
I would love to bring those days back, even if it was just for a year. I have these fantasies, Todd, that like if it was for a year, like even if I didn't know the expiration date, how long the trend would last, I would still live every day like it was my last. So I would go from doing 1 book a month to 2 books a month to doing 3 books a month. You know what I mean? Like I would be I would get so much product out there. It would make your head spin because, if I got that opportunity again, I would not that I pissed it away, but to be honest, I'm just going to say this about the Image days, the early Image days, like the first year, we were all burnt out. So one of the reasons we weren't as productive, this is a philosophy. This is my observation of it, because I know I was, because the workload at Marvel, and the pressure that was on us before we left to Image was immense. So when Image happened, it was kind of a chance to slow down a little bit and catch your breath. And I think a lot of us enjoyed it and didn't realize that we were kind of burnt out. You know what I mean? Like that until you stop and you get off the treadmill, you don't realize kind of that you're burnt out. Like you just don't really have much to give.
Now, let me ask you something about the Image days. Just out of curiosity, because I would assume this would be what somebody would do or how it would go, but you have this influx of talent. They did talent searches. They would grab people at conventions, and boom, you have a new wave of guys. You had the guy who did, who does the steampunk girl now and all that stuff. So these guys just come out of this talent searches. Were there people that they said, "Hey, Art, we need you to ink this guy," and he's not quite there, but improve the faces and do this and do that. Was that part of it?
Yeah, but that's kind of always been my career, to be honest.
Right. I would assume so. I just wondered if, that was definitely, some of these guys looked better because they worked with veteran inkers,
Yeah, I think there's always been that. And like I said, for me, it's always been there. I kind of want to name names, but I'm not.
No, I would assume everybody in there. Go look at everybody's first book or first issue or second, or even look at Mark Schultz, the very first Xenozoic Tales. You're not talking. He didn't have that Zeta look off the bat. Everyone sort of grows. You get out those what was it Byrne would say? You get out 100,000 pages of bad work before you do your best work, or something like that.
Yeah, well, you always have to have the X amount of hours logged at any, like if you want to be a musician or artist or whatever, before you get proficient at it. So, yeah, that definitely does exist. And we did do stuff like that,
I mean, even look at Jay Lee, right? His very first book or first few books, he drew just like Byrne. It was all John Byrne. And
was
then
it kind of Bisley like, or was that later?
No, now it was later. He became the line work became very organic looking, and sort of everything kind of came to sort of like a point, and it took on its own little life, and it really, I mean, it was refreshing to have somebody who had sort of that Image house style sort of all of a sudden come out with something and you go, whoa.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if you remember Nick Manabat, how little work of his we actually got. Imagine what he would have became, because he was really, really talented. And I mean, he died very young.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, he had a style though pretty early on, right? Like a pretty definable style.
Right.
Even though like technically maybe the drawing wasn't that solid, but he definitely had a pretty killer style.
Yeah.
All right, Death Metal Hero says, you are correct, Art. There is a lot to go through in the catalog. That's why I do monthly previews, picks to help people find the good stuff. Yeah, and like I said, like I would love to work with retail stores, and I love that there's still people fighting the good fight and putting selling comics and getting them out in front of people. But man, it's such an obstacle. Time is such an obstacle, and I've had a problem with them for a while now. And I don't think that it's serving the comics industry as well as it could. And I think that maybe Diamond is a little self-serving. I'll just put it that way, to be nice about it.
Simon Barnett says 20%. Wow, I wouldn't go through them unless you had made heaps of money already on the book. And I sort of agree with that, especially knowing that in the past they would not take your book unless they were guaranteed themselves that you could sell at least like 10,000 copies.
Exactly.
And now they'll take anything. And they're banking mostly on the fact that you're not going to get over that amount. They get most of their pay from the fact that it's a flat fee and they're not printing those high numbers of print.
And they're barely even shipping. Like they just warehouse the books from the printer. They don't even deliver to the comic shops. Like comic shops have to pay couriers, or they have to go pick the books up to save money from these warehouses. Diamond doesn't even really, they call themselves a distributor, but they don't really distribute to the actual location. There's couriers, and most of the time, I think all the time, the retailers have to pick up that cost. So that's added to their expense, and also it's 20%. But you have to remember, it's not off the cover. Like you're selling the book at a discounted price to the retailers. So it's not like if it's a $4 book, you might be making, I don't know, 70.
What was it, like $1 or 50 cents?
$0.70, yeah, something like that of the book. So it's not bad, but it's like you said, if you sell 10,000, that's $10,000.
I misunderstood. I thought they were talking about Image, but yeah, that was Image's number back in like 2003 to 2010. Like you had to sell, they had to be sure that you were going to sell 10,000 books, or else they wouldn't pick you up.
I was just using it as an example. Like today, if you sold 10,000 books, which sounds like a lot of books by today's standards, you would still only make $10,000.
Yeah,
gross, and you'd have to pay your entire team printing, any advertising and stuff out of that $10,000, that's you're gonna be paying money out of your pocket. You can't. There's no way you can really do a book for that amount. It would have to be a pure labor of love, and you'd have to have a day job, while you were working on your book, because there's no other way you could do it. Unless all your finances are paid for something.
Yeah, all the minimum, like I did the math on it like about a week ago. If you wanted to put out a book for minimum cost, paid all the printing with minimum printing, paid for like 100 copies, did all the like the cheapest artist that you can find, cheapest writer you can find, other than just like pure free, it's like minimum of $6,000, and that's like the cheapest bottom of the barrel that you can find. For average, it's more like $20,000-$30,000 per issue for like a 24-page book.
Yeah. Death Metal here says, I completely agree. Diamond needs a competing distributor. Yeah, they managed to either destroy, or the other ones fell short. I used to love, there was a company called Capital, and those guys played nice with the industry.
Wasn't that DC thing?
What's that?
Wasn't that DC's distributor?
No, they carried everything. They were just like Diamond. They were the competitor to Diamond. They actually had certain what do they call those, like areas that were they just basically sold to or distributed to, that Diamond didn't even have. I guess they call them territories.
Yeah, if I remember right, they were they worked out of New York, and they were mainly fronted by DC. Like DC gave them all their support, if I remember right. But
they might have given them all their support, but they carried Marvel books, and they carried everything as well. Heroes World, I think, was bought by Marvel, and then Marvel pulled their books from Diamond and distributed them just through their own company, which was Heroes World. And I thought that was pretty ballsy, and I kind of applauded it at the time. I'm not sure why it fell through and why it didn't happen, but it did exist. But Capital was already gone by then. I always think this too, like DC is Time Warner. They already have distribution channels everywhere. So it wouldn't be that much harder for them to distribute their own books. They already have the infrastructure to do that,
Yeah, same with Disney and Marvel. I mean,
they don't have a distribution.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't. They subcontract to everybody. Like Disney doesn't even have a comic book publishing division.
Yeah, but they have a distributor for their Disney product. I forget what it's exactly called, but they have it for their general Disney products. They haven't integrated with Marvel yet.
With the comic books.
Yeah, which is like confused a lot of people, because you'd think that they would just do that and write Diamond out of the mix, but they haven't.
Well, exactly. They bought Heroes World, which was a distribution company, and then it fell short. So I don't know how these things work, to be honest, why they fall through and why sometimes there isn't follow through, because there's been a lot of good ideas that have been pitched and that people have moved towards in the past. I just think it takes follow through and belief in it. And it's really hard sometimes when you're financially not doing that well, because you have to double down and be and just have integrity and believe in what you're doing, and then just play the long game. The problem with comic books is that for a long time, we haven't played the long game. So everything is kind of short-sighted and for the quick dollar, without trying to have an overall 10-year growth plan or something like that. So everybody's just kind of, spinning their wheels to try to make ends meet at the moment. And the problem with that is that you have what you have, where you have a lot of cash grab kind of scenarios, and things that are fairly superficial and short term. And that I believe is the problem. And the reason I don't understand why this is happening for the big two like Marvel and DC is that somebody needs the cojones. And I don't know, like I said, I don't pretend to know how these things are run, but somebody at those companies, Marvel and DC, need to go to their parent company, Warner Brothers or Disney or whoever it is, and say, listen, comic books are viable. We have come up with a way of doing this, but it's a 10-year plan. It's going to cost us X amount of money, and for 2 years, we're just going to break even. But with this plan, make sure it's all worked out, and go to those, your heads, your bosses, and say, we need you to believe in this for 10 years. This is what we have, and this is the plan. Look through it. If there's anything you want to alter or change, feel free. We'll come up with a 10-year game plan, and we'll start selling comic books like nobody's business. You don't think, Coca-Cola does that? You don't think, McDonald's does that? Like these other corporations? Of course they do.
I think based on what people have told me about the corporate structures of these two businesses, I think DC is more afraid that if they were to do something like that, Time Warner would be like, yeah, you're underperforming, you're fired, everything's gone. Exactly. And I think Marvel is the exact opposite, where Disney doesn't care what they're producing, so there's no reason for them to improve because they're going to get the money anyways. They're just an IP farm for them.
I think
you survive off of the IP licensing and stuff like that.
Yeah, 1% of $1 billion. Ooh, that's.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And also, like in the case of DC, is Warner Brothers, if DC is operating at a loss, their R&D, they get to write off on their taxes every year. So that's a killer write-off for a corporation like that. And they get R&D, in the process. So they get new storylines created, they get new characters created that they can license and market down the line, and they get to write the operation off as long as it's taking a loss. So that's another thing, like in business, that if you look at the big picture, a huge corporation like that, sometimes they need those losses to show, to help them with the profit. So if you could basically have an R&D company that operated at a loss that you could write it off as profit, why not, right?
Right.
Arthur Bronze asks, what do you do about turnout and artistic block?
Say again, what was that?
What do you do about burnout and artistic block?
Oh, I say this all the time. There's no time for it. You don't have it. You have to be creative on command. I've done this for 35 years. I'm going on 36 this year, and there's just no time for it. I think that's one of the good parts about the business too, is that it's so demanding. You really don't have too much time to stop and think about it. I do now. I have more time. Not really time, I shouldn't say it that way, but I have to think about those things more, just to run my business. But before, you just kind of keep your head down and you just keep moving through the work. And like I love, like, because my daughter just graduated from college, and she's got a fine arts degree, and they talk about inspiration and finding your inspiration and all these lofty things, and it's like, really, I've never had that luxury. Sometimes the inspiration just comes with fear of not paying your rent or not making your deadline or being fired. Sometimes I remember there was a San Diego comic panel, and somebody asked, they asked the lofty, question. It was like, how do you find, your inspiration and all the other stuff? Like, what motivates you? I go, honestly, what motivates me is fear. Just pure and simple fear, of not working next month or not having, enough money to make ends meet. So fear, never underestimate that, man, because it could be a big motivator.
Put pen to paper, move the pen, something will come out, and if it's trash, keep moving the pen until it's something good.
Yeah, you'll get it next panel. Like that's kind of the philosophy, is you'll get it next time. You know, you kind of got to do what you got to do, make it work best as you can, and then always aspire to do it better. You know, the next panel or whatever.
That's the best that you can do, really. And if you're not doing it, then you're not improving and you're not doing it. So that's not really a block. It's just you not doing it.
Yeah, I like this. Pablo Romero art says inspiration has to find you working. Yes, I think Picasso said that. Yeah, so I also think the more you do, the more your brain starts resolving problems quicker. You know what I mean by that is like where like if you're looking for the inspiration and you're always looking outside of yourself, and you know it's a lofty goal. It's a process, but the more you kind of problem solve quickly and move through the work, you'll find less and less looking for the inspiration, because you're already going to be just kind of, it's going to naturally be coming to you as you're working. And I think that's what Pablo's trying to say.
There's a video on YouTube from a writing professor trying to teach people how to write. And one of the things he talks about is the way people look at writing is wrong. They take it as first you think, then you write. But he was saying, no, the process of writing is you thinking, and then you go back and fix whatever the problems are. Because once you've written, then you're expressing yourself on the paper. You haven't put that like out there in your mind yet. You haven't built it yet.
Yeah, because also story ideas in your head, when you start crafting them, they play out completely different. You know, when you start crafting them in a story, because everything works in your head, like all the timelines and the order of all the events. But then when you start writing them down in a structure form, you start realizing, wait a minute, this is happening before that other event, So just chronologically speaking, this is all messed up. But yet it worked fine in your head. You know?
Yeah, how many times have you had that smooth pickup line that you said and it just didn't work?
Yeah.
In your head it worked. Not so much in reality.
Not so much. Yeah, reality is its own beast. These days can't be so precious to you. You got to kill your darlings, Mark Silvestri. You have to kill your darlings. That sounds exactly like Mark. Okay, I'm gonna read this, and then we should wrap it up. I believe both him and Stephen King took the "Kill Your Darlings" quote from a book from the 50s. So somebody quoted this from the 50s. Okay, so I want to thank everybody that hung with us through the chat. I know we had some serious competition, because I think EVS had Mike S. Miller, if I'm not mistaken, on his channel. They're probably going right now.
Are they? I don't even know. Are they friendsing it? I don't get it. What is going on?
They're not.
Yeah, I guess we're just going to have to tune in and find out. So I do appreciate all you guys coming in, because I know it's probably quite tempting to go over there and hang out and have those guys dish the dirt. But yeah, we were here. We had our following. We had our loyal, chat participator.
The number of people that are online streaming just like lit up with like 10 different channels.
What's that?
Like 10 different channels that are live right now.
Oh, seriously? So it's not just Ethan's?
For me.
Oh, okay.
Like The Rageaholic, Art to Bear, Jesse Miller, Trek Yards, Gary Shipman, Mike Miller, and Ricada Law.
Holy poop.
Yes, those were all plugs.
Yeah, well, they're all good friends. They all do good stuff. So it's all good. And we probably wore Todd out, because I think, Todd, what time zone are you in?
East. I'm in the East.
So
12:33.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Todd. I know this
No, I don't. I just don't. I don't have anything to add. We're kind of obviously off topic. I could sit here and ask you questions for hours, and then people probably would love that, but we all got to get to bed and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah, maybe we should do a Q&A in the future. So yeah, thanks again, and thanks to everybody, all the hosts, all the pontificators, and everybody in the chat. You guys have an amazing weekend, and
Hey, everybody, Happy New Year.
oh yes, Happy New Year. And we're going to try to do these pontificators more often. I think we have like 5 topics already that we just talked about earlier on, so we have stuff to cover. So thanks again, you guys. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Peace.